is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you on another sweltering hot day. We're going to talk about heat waves a little bit later on. Apparently 40-degree plus heat waves are going to become the norm. I'm like, well, better get some aircon then, everybody, eh? Anyway, this is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's great to have your company. If you're going to sit in the garden and, you know, work from home, well done you. Great to have you on board. Very much appreciate you joining me. Lots and lots to talk about. And by the way, if you do miss any of the show, you know, have to actually, you know, take a Zoom call or whatever it is, you can go to our YouTube page. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show is what they've called it, so it's very easy to find, and you can hit subscribe so you never miss a thing, and you'll get all of the biggest interviews there. We've got lots and lots of top guests coming up on the show, so you don't want to miss anything. Things we're going to be talking about in the next hour. Donald Trump says he's considering a range of options to use against Iran, including a possible US airstrike. This comes after the US president met with senior national security advisors shortly after sending a series of social media posts in which he warned Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei that the US knew where he was hiding, but they're not going to assassinate him yet. Meanwhile, Israel and Iran enter their 6th day of fighting, with Tehran launching another wave of missiles at Israel this morning as fears continue to grow that the conflict could escalate into an all-out regional war. Those are fears, among others. For me, I'm just incredibly grateful that Israel has done the deed to protect not just the Middle East and Israel, but the West from Iranian lunatics getting nuclear bombs. We'll be talking to the Israeli ambassador to the UK about that a little bit later on in the show. Plus, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has warned that Labour's failure to tackle the small boats crisis, bearing in mind we are looking at a 50% increase since Labour have come to power in the same time period in numbers of small arrivals. He says that it could risk fueling another grooming gang crisis as more and more foreign criminals are using the border chaos to slip into Britain illegally. Latest stats showing that foreign nationals account for more than 1 in 4 convictions for sexual assault in Britain. Those are just the convictions. Foreigners do not make up a quarter of our population, so that tells you something. Also, MPs voted last night in favour of decriminalising abortion, which means women will no longer face prosecution for aborting their own baby for any reason or at any stage all the way up to birth. The amendment was backed, I think, outrageously by 379 votes to 137 last night, almost entirely Labour votes there that delivered that change in the law. No proper discussion, 46 minutes of debate, no public debate at all about it. It just sprung on us, and now the law has changed. We'll talk about that as well. Delighted to say that coming up on the show throughout the whole 3 hours, joining me is former Conservative Government Advisor Claire Pearser, as always on a Wednesday. Very, very good morning. Looking very summery today as well.
Enjoying the heat wave.
Are you enjoying it? Okay, let's talk about the important. Sod World War III and Grooming. Are you enjoying it? A lot of Brits aren't. We like a couple of days on a Saturday or Sunday. We have a barbie, lovely job, and then we like it to go back to something a bit more normal.
Yeah, I do like the heat, so it doesn't bother me too much. Apart from in the evening when you go upstairs, really hot upstairs, so you have to have the fan on. But you know, I can suffer that. I prefer this.
Yeah, I'd rather prefer this to rain. Yeah. I think it's for getting a summer. I have to say, when they warn about, we may be getting 40 degree plus heat waves, for, and they've got a yellow weather warning. And that's because apparently, if you're vulnerable or elderly, you don't know it's hot unless the BBC Met Office tells you that it is, because they obviously think you're as thick as they think the rest of us are. But it is quite like, oh, by the way, it's hot out there. No, really?
You just have to look out the window, don't you? But I mean, there are things.
That said, I have a teenager who will look out the window and look at rain and still not take an umbrella. So what can I do?
Well, yes, I have similar. Doesn't take a coat even when it's in -2 temperatures. So yeah, I'm with you on that one.
So we've done the important stuff. We've covered the important topic of the day. Let's get to the real business. Look, I want to hear from you when it comes to grooming gangs, whether or not they are a border security issue. That is what the Tories are claiming. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, it's what Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, is saying, who we do expect actually to be at PMQs today, actually. Angela Rayner was taking PMQs because Keir Starmer was conveniently in the sky on the way back from that G7 summit. And Angela Rayner would be taking it. Now, normally it would be, he's the Shadow Chancellor Duchy of Lancaster. I mean, who? I think it's Alex Berg who took it last time. But I have a funny feeling Kemi Badenoch is going to want to have her say, particularly on the issue of grooming gangs. But our question today is, Tories claiming that grooming gangs are a border security issue, with many suspects of sex abuse now foreign or claiming asylum. That's what Louise Casey says. Now, if I say it, I'm a racist. OK, hi Owen Jones, hi Emily Maitlis, hi all the usual suspects. OK, Keir Starmer, that would make me a racist. If, however, Baroness Casey, a Labour peer, says it, based on exactly the same facts, then it's true and needs to be acted on. But it's always interesting to know that they care about who says things rather than the actual facts. OK, if Tommy Robinson says it and it's true, it's still true. And if, I don't know, Jess Phillips, who claims she's, the only person looking after children in this country, victims of abuse, says it and it's not true, then it's still not true. But anyway, many suspects of sex abuse, live cases that you looked at, a disproportionate number were foreign or those claiming asylum. We know sex abuse statistics, sex attack statistics, not just child abuse. The 1 in 4, at least 26%, at least 1 in 4 sex attack suspects who are prosecuted and convicted are foreign born. And there's quite a big percentage more who we don't know their nationality status. I think, as with the case of the grooming gangs, when it's not recorded, it's because no one wants you to know. And I think we can make safe assumptions that we can probably add another 10% or something onto that. What is your reaction to that? That's what I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. But as always, get in touch about anything we're talking about. Claire, what is your reaction to that?
With the border security issue, I mean, there is an issue. There is a proper problem with not recording the nationality and ethnicity data. Now, that is ongoing. It has been a problem for some time. I think that Chris Philp needs to take a long, hard look at himself.
Shadow Home Secretary, yes.
Shadow Home Secretary, Shadow Justice. He has been in those departments whilst in government. So you could argue, why wasn't that changed?
Whenever the Tories shout, I mean, Keir Starmer's got a point here when they shout and scream about stuff. Like, what were you? You were in the right. You were in the department. You weren't you weren't the PM. I get it, but you still didn't do anything about it.
But you didn't, and we need to understand exactly who is committing crimes, and you should be able to do that without being accused of being racist. If somebody's breaking the law, if somebody is committing abhorrent crimes,
it's utterly irrelevant. Exactly. Here's my thing. It's really simple. It's just sort of, yes, we have plenty British people who deal drugs and rape and murder and steal and commit sex attacks and commit child abuse. Yes, well, we've got those people and we need to deal with them.
Yeah.
Maybe not a good idea to import a load more people to do all of those things. I don't know. Old-fashioned, I know. But we also know when it comes to pretty much any crime at all, statistically, there are certain countries who immigrant to this country, certain nationals from certain countries, who are more likely to be committing crimes, and who are more likely to be convicted of crimes. And we know that the same countries come up again and again and again. Yeah. And there's some Middle Eastern countries and North African countries. Albania comes up. A high, incredible amount of organised criminality in Albania. You could like it or not like it, it's a fact. Anyone living in Albania will be able to tell you that. So, it is like, pickpockets on London transport, virtually all Romanian. Okay, you can be angry about it, but that's a fact. But it seems to me to be very obvious that it wouldn't be a good idea. And I'm kind of in Donald Trump territory on this. And I don't support everything he does. I do support something. I'm just, whether is an idea good or not? I'm pretty sure that we should really start thinking about Trumpian-style bans on default visas for people from certain countries where they have medieval views towards women and children. Yes, Pakistan, I'm thinking of you. A number of countries, they just simply do not, the average person in these countries does simply not share our values. They are very unlikely statistically to be economic contributors. We can pick and choose people, but there should be a default that you are not going to be someone who can easily get into our country. Yeah. Unless you can prove you are a massive benefit to our country and that you share values. I don't think that should be a controversial view.
No, I don't. There need to be some repercussions for those countries. If you are the head of state of whichever country it is, and we're saying, actually, we're now going to cut the visas down. You did get 100,000. You're going to have 25,000 this year.
No, not even. No, too many.
Well,
no one from your country comes in unless they can. We can be absolutely sure.
You get my point. Yeah. You cut it right down so it's a notable difference to them, and you say, and we're not going to change this, and you've now got 2 years to sort yourselves out. It should be for a longer period of time.
There are reasons, and again, that's what a lot of people were very angry about. Like it's Asian gangs. It wasn't. It was men from a particular community from areas in Pakistan where they have particularly medieval views. And again, no, don't say that. It's right. No, it's not. If you view women as, Nigel Farage said it. They're not even second-class citizens in many countries. They don't even have those rights. If you come from a country where women are forced to cover up, where you can't, a woman is raped and she's the one who gets punished for being, an adulterer or something, where children are routinely sexually abused and are used as child prostitutes openly, and it's kind of not even something that there is shame about. I think this is not a country we should be doing much business with. Certainly not in terms of allowing people to this country. Again, not sure why that's controversial, but there we are. Give us a call. It's like, nightclubs. Like, no, you can't bring in a large group of blokes. You have to have women with you because you're more likely to cause trouble. And we accept that. We accept it, because we've run a nightclub for 20 years, and every time we let a large group of blokes in and they get really drunk and they haven't got ladies with them, they're more likely to start a fight. So we don't let them in. Now they've actually started banning Hindus because they're worse in terms of trouble,
But they are, and if you try to rent an apartment or a cottage or something, if it's a hen weekend... Yeah.
So we're allowed to make rules where we're allowed to go, look, on balance of probabilities, it's not looking good for us. Well, on the balance of probabilities, I'm thinking letting in people from certain countries is not looking good for us, well, particularly not for our children, but there we are. We've still got the issue of child sex offenders' ethnicity going unrecorded, something that Louise Casey's talked about yesterday, the Baroness who carried out the review. Again, they ask your ethnicity, would you join a library?
Yeah, they do.
So how on earth are they not recording it? Of course they're recording it. We had a police officer on yesterday who spoke anonymously. Of course they're recording it. They just deliberately do it in a way.
Well, they do, but why is it hidden? Why is it hidden? Why should you not put what your ethnicity is?
We know why it's hidden.
Doesn't make you a racist if you're going to put down what nationality or ethnicity somebody is.
What do you make of Keir Starmer refusing repeatedly in interviews, Sky News are the ones who tackled it the best on this, but refusing repeatedly to apologise or say he regretted for saying that people were jumping on a far-right bandwagon when they were calling for the public inquiry. He said, even though, of course, he's now jumping on that far-right bandwagon because he's calling for a public inquiry, his his defence is, well, I was criticising politicians who shout and scream but don't then do anything about it. But he's exactly the same, isn't he? Because he came into office and for almost 11 and a half months he didn't institute a national statutory public inquiry into this issue. And he had the opportunity to do it, and he categorically said not to. And when there was a Tory vote on it, Tory amendment, they whipped Labour MPs to vote against it. So he did exactly the same. He is exactly what he accuses other people of being.
Yeah, he is, but he won't apologise because it's what he believes. He believes that anybody that is questioning it is heinously right-wing or a far-right idiot or whatever the words he wants to use. That's what he believes. That's why he's never going to apologise for it. He has been pushed into this, whether he likes it or not, by the likes of Reform, by parts of the Conservative Party. He doesn't like to be...
By Elon Musk.
Yeah, by Elon Musk.
I have to say also, I'm going to shout out Charlie Peters, reporter at our rival GB News, but Charlie Peters, big shout out to him, amazing young reporter.
Completely.
Who's done amazing work on this, literally sits in the grooming gang trials, does the work.
He does. I mean, he is excellent, and he has highlighted this time after time after time. But I think Keir Starmer doesn't ever want to admit that he was wrong on this.
I don't think he ever does.
To weasel it out.
Imagine being married to Keir Starmer, because that this is a man who would never... No, I never said that. Yes, you did. Yeah, you did. You know those rows, those 3 in the morning. Went, yes, you did. I never did. He would stand and he would believe it. I genuinely... I tweeted yesterday, I think the guy is a lying charlatan. I've met him.
Yeah.
He may well be an event I go to later this week, and I'm sure we'll get on perfectly well, have a nice conversation. But I genuinely find him so unlikable and so unconvincing. I think he's so arrogant and self-believing. He just but with no substance.
He's
absolutely no substance. No, I don't think he's... I think he thinks he's... Benedict Spence, who formerly of this parish, we hope very much will soon be back on the show. Benedict Spence sent an interesting tweet yesterday, post on X, saying that the thing about all these Labour people and people on the left who are horrified, is why did they not take action? Why did they just shout racist at everyone, calling out the grooming gang scandal? Is that they genuinely believe that being racist is the worst thing in the world, and it's worse than violence or criminal acts or even raping a child. Racism is the worst thing, and so you could never risk being racist, and you must attack people for racism over anything else. It doesn't matter that child safety is at risk. And I think that actually nails it for a lot of people in the Labour Party and in the Labour cabinet.
They want to be seen as the better person, and they believe that anybody else must be a racist and a bigot, and therefore you are the worst person ever. And they're not, and they can hold their heads up at their Islington dinner parties and clutch their pearls and everything.
We always talk about Islington dinner parties, but I cannot tell you how on this. Should we get to the small matter of war in the Middle East? Sorry, we should have probably got to that a bit sooner rather than talking about the heatwave, but come on. We're going to be talking to the Israeli ambassador in the next 20 minutes or so. A lot of talk about Donald Trump being poised to enter the war between Israel and Iran. We're on the, I think, sixth day. We are looking at significant escalation. Lots of the posts on social media from Donald Trump saying, "Oh, we know where Khamenei is, the supreme leader." By the way, great job title. Julia Hartley-Brewer, supreme leader of the Julia Hartley-Brewer show. That we know where he's hiding, but we're not going to assassinate him yet. Lots of exclamation marks. I mean, this is, again, not how diplomacy should be done. That said, I don't trust diplomacy behind the scenes either. There's a lot of talk about if they want to destroy crucial Iranian nuclear site, the Fordow facility, believed to be, dozens and dozens of yards below rock underground. The only country that's got the bombs is America that could do this. This is a 30,000 GBU 57 FB massive ordnance penetrator bomb. This has a thick steel outer casing that can... This is amazing. It can penetrate 65 yards of concrete before exploding. Yeah. I mean, that is a serious bomb. Now, I'm all in favour of the US getting involved at this point. I'm not entirely sure that Iran is that big a threat anymore, given the way the Israelis have, thankfully, degraded their ability to defend themselves. It looks like, Iran did a fly past. So Israel did a fly past, literally like our fly past, over the palace, over Tehran. That's how much control of the skies they've got. We should be thanking Israel rather than saying, "Oh, could you please stop?" Shouldn't we?
Well, of course we should, because any war that escalates in that region is going to affect the rest of the world. So Israel being right on their doorstep and putting preemptive strikes out there to stop enriched uranium being put into weapons absolutely gets my support.
Yeah, people standing on the streets of Britain or America waving flags for Iran, like,
stop.
I mean,
stop.
So wrong about everything. Love to hear your thoughts. Get in touch on that, of course, and everything else. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Coming up, we're going to be talking next to a former Conservative government minister, Steve Baker. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Well, also he had some kind of stuff cooking. I don't know if you noticed it or not, but there's this little war in the Middle East, and there's also a big budget fight going on in Washington, D.C., and then there's Russia continues to send drones and missiles into Ukraine. So he's got some stuff to do besides standing around with Macron, talking about where you can get the best croissant. Come on. He showed up.
Yeah, can you imagine seeing the guest list and thinking, oh, no, not that lot again?
Some of these people. And then and then you're stuck in Canada. So what do they serve you? Like some poutine and a hockey puck.
The Israeli ambassador about those Israeli and Iran airstrikes and whether or not America might get involved. First up, though, don't forget to get in touch on the grooming gangs and whether or not they are or not a border security issue, which is what the Tories claim. Many suspects of sex abuse are now foreign or claiming asylum. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll get your calls just after this next interview. Right now, I'm delighted to welcome to the show, old friend of the show, former Conservative government minister, Steve Baker. A very good morning to you, Steve.
Good morning, Julia. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. I want to talk to you, first of all, about this sort of, failure to tackle the small boats crisis. But just first up, can we talk about Keir Starmer refusing to apologise yesterday for labelling people expressing concerns about grooming gangs and saying there should be a national public inquiry as jumping on a far-right bandwagon? He said he didn't regret it. He stood by those remarks, refused 2 or 3 times in questioning to say he wished he hadn't said it. He said he was calling out those politicians. He said, I'm frustrated with politics when people shout and scream a lot and do nothing when they've got the opportunity to do it. It's one of the worst aspects of politics, in my view. First of all, do you agree with him? And do you think he should apologise?
I certainly think he should apologise, yes. I mean, look, he's engaging in the absolutely worst kind of politics. He's trying to deflect blame. I just, before I came on air, checked what Kemi had said about what we did. She's referred online, forgive me reading it, to the 2023 Gang Task Force, which we set up. It found 4,000 new victims and arrested 807 perpetrators. Those figures led the Conservatives to believe that we had to have a full national inquiry. And Kemi's tweet goes on. So our party took this extremely seriously. I'm afraid the truth is that the Labour Party doesn't believe in equal justice for every individual. They believe in justice in outcomes. And that leads them to pervert the whole idea of justice. And Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, illustrated that looking at police guidance. There's a suggestion of manipulating the way justice is applied in order to get equal outcomes for different ethnic groups.
Yeah.
That is a complete perversion of justice. And Keir Starmer shouldn't just apologise for having smeared people in the past. He should stop and think extremely seriously about what just means. And if he thinks you manipulate justice for the individual to get equal outcomes for groups of people, well, I wish he'd say that plainly to the public so he can be voted out promptly at the next election.
Yeah, everything was blamed on, sentencing council and the like, as opposed to actually government actually going along with these things. There is, however, and I think I made a point to a shadow Tory minister now yesterday that, you guys, you were in government as well. I know this wasn't your department, but nothing was done. I mean, we knew about this. This was on the front page of the Times and in the Mail. Other people were talking about, 2009, 2010 onwards. Tories were in power. So much submerged in this. Baroness Casey review. I mean, Labour going, oh, well, now Baroness Casey says all this, then it must all be true. And yes, it's Pakistani, largely grooming gangs, and that's an issue. And this is on an ongoing scale. Now, there was nothing. I didn't see a single thing in Louise Casey's report that I didn't already know. And I've just been paying attention. I would expect the Shadow Home Secretary, who's now the Home Secretary, and the former Director of Public Prosecutions, who's now the Prime Minister, to have known a lot more than me about it. So when they say they didn't know, or now things have changed, now they need a public statutory inquiry. I mean, there's no reason why we need one now if we didn't need one 2 days ago. But we needed one all along, and the Tories didn't do it. Do you not feel embarrassed and ashamed that the Tories failed to act on this?
I don't feel ashamed, no, certainly not. I would feel ashamed if I'd personally failed, but I know that I personally didn't. I'm absolutely clear that zero tolerance is the right approach to child sexual exploitation. Back in 2012, there were arrests on allegations of gang child sexual exploitation in Wickham, and I'm very clear that in Wickham, the police...
That was your old seat.
My own seat, yeah. I'm very clear that absolutely everyone in authority in Wickham put the victims first and applied the law equally to everyone. So in terms of the conduct of those investigations and arrests, and indeed the trial in Wickham, I'm absolutely confident that the law was applied equally to all. But I think that slightly reflects that this is a Conservative area, or long since has been. Yeah. It isn't now. Labour MP now. But from my point of view, the system worked as it should. Now, of course, I'm afraid whatever people may hold us all collectively to account, that's the nature of party politics. But I'm afraid I'm not actually responsible for what happens in the detail in Rotherham. No. And certainly those ministers who were in the Home Office do need to answer what they knew and what they did or didn't do. And it is. But you do make a very fair point, though. In your area, Tory area, it is a matter of fact that the vast majority of places where this has been highlighted as happening on a grand scale are Labour-run councils. Is that a factor in this, do you think? I absolutely do think that it is a factor, and I want to be absolutely clear why. It is because the left believe in equal justice in the outcome, and you just can't have both. I mean, economists have argued.
Explain what you mean by that, though.
So if you want to treat people equally under law, irrespective of their gender or their race or their religion, you take the law and you apply it equally to that person with what is known as blind justice, right? So you just say, this is the law, this is the person,
you commit this crime, you get done, yeah.
You test what they've done against the law, and the consequences will be what the jury decides that they are. But if one, as the Labour Party does, if one believes in equal outcomes for groups, to say that you must be equally guilty or innocent, or you must have equal economic outcomes across different identity groups, as soon as you want equal outcomes across groups, that inevitably means that the process has to be manipulated to get those equal outcomes. It's just inevitable, because people are all different, and if you apply justice in the process, you will get different outcomes. And unfortunately, the Labour Party, they may not appreciate this argument, but because they believe in equality of outcome, that absolutely...
But isn't it also, it's about multiculturalism, this belief that, different, we can't attack certain different cultures because they do things differently, and this general view that we let things go, we, society, the government authorities, let things go in certain communities, let's face it, because of their religion or the colour of their skin, which wouldn't pass muster for, should we say, native Brits?
Well, that is absolutely the key question. Did people in authority apply the law unequally because of people's race or religion? That is the absolutely key question, because a fundamental...
And the answer seems to be very clear. Yes, they did.
It does seem to be very clear, yes, but it needs to be proven and action needs to be taken. But I'm absolutely clear that everyone in authority should apply the principle of equal justice for all. That is the rule of law. Justice should be blind, and actually victims deserve blind justice for everyone.
Let's also talk about the asylum seeker issue, because Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, he has said that actually the small boats crisis risks fueling further grooming gang cases. He said that they're using the border chaos to slip into Britain illegally. We know it's up 50% in this same time period as it compared to last year. So the gangs are definitely not being smashed by Keir Starmer. We now know that 1 in 4 sex crimes, not grooming cases, but sex assaults in this country, the people who are convicted are foreign. That's the minimum. We know it's at least 26%. There's about another 10% we don't actually know their nationality. So I think we can safely assume that it's probably likely to be more. Big concern was raised even in Louise Casey's report that if the live cases she looked at involving grooming cases, a high proportion of those men who were accused were foreign nationals and some asylum seekers as well. How big an issue do you think this is in terms of border security?
Well, I do think it's a very large issue, and we should be really clear about who's coming to this country, and illegal immigration must be stopped. And this has been, of course, why we put in place the Rwanda scheme. Keir Starmer stopped it, and now, of course, things have got worse and worse. So it is a serious issue. I do think it's worth saying that there can be zero tolerance where people break the law. So in particular, in relation to women's rights, I don't doubt that there are places in the world where women are not accorded equal status and equal rights, and that is wrong. And we should be absolutely clear with people when they live in the UK that women are to be treated equally and accorded equal respect. And you and I both know that over the course of our lifetimes, things have dramatically improved in the UK for women. And, actually it's a matter of shame the way women were treated perhaps when we were younger. But right now, people need to be absolutely clear that the law applies equally to all, and no amount of cultural sensitivity to the practices of immigrants can excuse breaking the law. Yeah. The law is there for all of them, and yeah, it is a border security issue, but it's also an issue that we lost confidence in ourselves to insist on our own culture and to insist on obedience to our
I don't think the British people did. I think politicians, the political class did.
Well, the political class did, of course, because they're vote-seeking, and that has been the problem. And I'm afraid even oppositions can set the tone of debate. There's kind of a centre ground emerges, and then, of course, the newspapers will carry what they will and so forth. But, yeah, politicians need to absolutely have the confidence to stand up for what is right and to take the heat for it.
Absolutely.
And I hope I did while I was an MP.
I'm very much on your side. You were somewhat some of a contrarian on some key issues, but proved right on all of them. Steve Baker, great to have you on the show, former Conservative MP and Government Minister. Claire Pearsall, just your reaction to what he had to say?
That was a really fair analysis, actually, of the problem that we face in
He's
politics.
always very measured, Steve Baker.
He is. I really enjoy listening to him, and I don't think he was accorded enough time in the chamber or within the Conservative Party. I think if he was much higher up and taken much more notice of, we would have done better.
That's very interesting, very interesting. I'd love to hear from you on all of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Lots of messages coming in, lots of calls on the board, but love to get you on air. Your thoughts in particular about the Tories claiming grooming gangs are a border security issue, tying in to the biggest issue, the grooming gang scandal, and indeed the Channel boat scandal together, saying many suspects of sex abuse are now foreign or claiming asylum. Well, even Baroness Casey is saying that. Labour peer who's written this report, which led to this public inquiry, actually going to be happening. Hoping at some point today we may find out some details about this public inquiry, who's going to head it, how long it will take. We're told maybe 3 years. Yeah, really good luck with that, and what the remit will be. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all that, and also on Keir Starmer, who's just repeatedly refuses to row back on saying that he believes that Tories and other politicians were jumping on a far-right bandwagon when they called for a national public inquiry, even though he's clearly just jumped on that far-right bandwagon. Welcome on board, Prime Minister, by announcing that inquiry himself. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We'll take your calls up next. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearson also with us. Let's go to some of your text messages. John says, and I'm asking about, Tories claiming grooming gangs are a border security issue. Many suspects of sex abuse now foreign or claiming asylum. John says, then why weren't the Conservatives pledged to leave the European Convention on Human Rights? I mean, they're moving that way, aren't they, Claire? I think we're pretty sure that the Tories will. I think everyone's going to have to pledge to do that. So the Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary for Labour, she has talked about how we need to reform the European Convention. It's like, well, yeah, good luck with that, love. That's like reforming the EU instead of voting to leave it.
Yeah, it is, and I think more countries are looking at what they can do, and it doesn't solve everybody's problems at the moment. So they are looking at what they do with the ECHR. I think more people are moving in that direction. I think we need to have a proper conversation about it, not just knee-jerk reaction that isn't going to benefit the United Kingdom. But I think that there is an awful lot of work that needs to be done, looking at why it isn't working for us, and is there anything you can do? Would reform actually do any good? And if the answer to that is no, then you have to leave it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's rather big issues there, aren't there? Let's go. Paul also says deportations are the only answer. Henry says, why did Tories spend 14 years presiding over open borders? The government is almost as bad as the people traffickers. Kane says, firstly, let's not have open borders. Yeah, there's an idea, eh? Cynthia says, any intelligent leader would put extra patrols along the border to stop criminals from entering. A country and its citizens have the right to be safe. The border they failed to protect for 14 years, says Graham. They are only just slightly better than Labour. I mean, it's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, I do think this. I mean, we had a Tory on yesterday, Tory Shadow Minister, and I do find it a little bit difficult. So, like, really, I know it can be big, and it's very likely. I mean, no one knows yet. She's going to do Prime Minister's questions, which is Deputy Prime Minister's questions, and she did the response to the Home Secretary's announcement as well yesterday. But the fundamental Monday, the fundamental thing is that, she's good on this kind of thing, but the government still failed. And at the end of the day, I'm not really interested in people's personal records. I'm more interested in what, what's actually being done.
But they have to also acknowledge that, and that's what I find really difficult to deal with, is that there are problems. The Conservative Party didn't do enough of what they actually needed to do. So it's all very well to say we did X, Y and Z, and as Steve Baker was pointing out, numbers of people that were removed. Well, that's irrelevant because it's only a small part of the problem. You need to acknowledge you're failing in it.
Absolutely. Well, let's go to the phone lines. Claire is on the line. She's in the Wirral. Very good morning to you, Claire. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia, and good morning, Claire. I think I caused a bit of a stir the last time I phoned up.
I think you did.
Was it James Matheson, I think?
Yes.
Because I actually stated that it's not just white people that can be racist. And, that caused a stir, apparently. But anyway, never mind. I will go on to say, before I cause more of a stir, which I probably will, that the Baroness Casey, she stated that the Pakistani rape gangs are connected to the illegal migrants coming in. So why is Starmer not calling for a national emergency, in which case he could stop the boats? I know he doesn't want to stop the boats, really. But
no, he doesn't. No, but again, the Tories could have done that as well. That's what annoys me.
Yeah, but I think now that all of this, has come out about, Baroness Casey's report and so on, it actually proves a point now. There's always a chance that, you might get the wrong, and everyone thinks they're great, don't they? You can't get any terrorists coming over on boats.
People who smuggle themselves around the world and pay people smugglers to get here illegally. I mean, why would you ever, it's like Hamas, why would you think they'd ever lie?
I know, because they're very, very honest, very, very nice people. Everyone's very good in the the Labour kind of left mind, but apart
from white working class people, then they're liars and they're racists and bigots. So it's still difficult to keep up with the rules, Claire.
Exactly, but that's really what I wanted to say.
But here's the thing about declaring an emergency. I don't see why government needs to declare an emergency. One of the things that I'm really peeved about is, like, last night, this is due to backbench Labour MP's amendment, the law was changed regarding abortion in terms of decriminalising it up to birth. And that was just done. There you go. That's going to be in place. That law's going to be in place in a few months' time, assuming it goes through the Lords. There we go. Done. And they can change the law. It's the idea that everything takes years or months, has to be negotiated. When they shut our borders, when they made it illegal for us to even like drive to an airport with an intention to get on a plane during 2020 and 2021, when they shut us in our houses for 22 hours a day and banned kids from going on swings, they seemed to be able to do that all very quickly when they wanted to. And I know they used emergency laws then, but again, governments can do anything they want to do if they have the will.
Exactly, and they've never had the will, and as they say, the cogs run very slow, but they don't in other instances. And I think this abortion law is absolutely draconian. It's disgusting.
I think it's absolutely outrageous. The idea that I'm a woman who supports the right of women to abortion, but not I'm sorry, at some point your baby accrues rights which you have to be taken into account. It's just extraordinary. Claire, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Anne, who's in Gwynedd. Good morning to you, Anne.
Good morning. I was listening yesterday, and apart from the fact that everything was horrendous, the saddest thing also is that all the calls you had, nobody trusted the government.
Yeah.
And not only that, they say there's going to be 1,000 cases reviewed. Why not just get one group done first and see how the response is?
What do you mean, see how the response is?
Well, how many people are going to leave that area? How far, take it right to the very end until the conviction. And
but we know that these cases take years to come to court, though. I mean, I'd rather they were all ongoing. It's bad enough. Some of them have been waiting 20 years as it is.
But in Southport, it was done within 3 days.
No, it's very, very different. Out here, Axel Rudikabana was, seen, fleeing the scene, caught very, very quickly, and then you've got a trial that happened within months. A lot of those people pleaded guilty. People, who convicted riots and things pleaded guilty. That's why their cases happen so quickly. If you're talking about grooming cases that have gone on for years, collecting that evidence, getting, witness tapes. I mean, it shouldn't take as long as it does take. That's a level of incompetence on the police and the prosecution services part. But it will take. And then there's a backlog in the courts for these jury trials. So you're talking about years.
Can't they fast forward that? The other point I'd like to make, which is quite controversial, is everybody's talking about the 70s, but in 1968, an MP made a statement and told the country that this could happen, and the media crucified him.
We're talking about Enoch Powell.
Yeah, and on YouTube, all his speeches are there now, and he talked so much quiet common sense.
I do think a lot of people completely they take the one phrase and they ignore an awful lot. Bearing in mind, Enoch Powell was a highly admired politician at the time, and when he died, Tony Blair paid tribute to him as one of the greatest thinkers of his generation. There's a lot to be said there. Anne, thank you very much indeed. 10:44 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, live in the studio, the Israeli ambassador to the UK, Zipi Hotoveli. This as the UK embassy in Israel, in Iran, I believe, has been evacuated, and Iran has said that what Donald Trump is saying is a recipe for all-out war. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
gave a presentation last Monday and said I thought that Iran's regime wouldn't last 6 months. That was before the Israeli attacks. I think it's just accelerated now, given the conditions inside Iran. 70% of people on less than $5 a day. They hate their government. The only thing that's holding them in place right now is the heavily repressive apparatus of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and the security services.
10:47 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Claire Pearsall still with me. Delighted to be joined now in the studio by the Israeli ambassador to the UK, Zippy Hotovely. Thank you very much indeed for joining us once again. We seem to be at war. In the Middle East. Lots of concerns over the last few years since, of course, the October the 7th massacre in Israel, that this conflagration with Gaza would spread. We had issues with Hezbollah's attacks and the retaliation there. And now we have what appears to be an all-out war between Israel and Iran. Where does it end?
This is a war that will end all our wars, because when we are hitting the head of the snake, the vicious program of the Iranian regime to actually destroy Israel, and to have these 3 layers of program. One was the nuclear program, the second was the ballistic missile program, and the third was the invasion program through the proxies. That was the big plan of the Iranians. I mean, we're talking about a regime that put a huge clock in the center of Tehran that is counting down until Israel is eliminated, and this
they weren't subtle about it.
I think we stopped the clock. What
do you think of the? We're going to talk about America's reaction in a moment, and what the likelihood of America getting involved. What do you make of David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary, and Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister's reaction? They're calling for, a ceasefire, calling for calm, de-escalation of what's going on. Do you feel that Britain is still an ally of Israel?
Well, you need to know the history. The history is quite long about this. Britain always stood next to Israel when it came to the fighting of the Iranian threat. The Iranian threat was clear to the British intelligence services. We heard your head of MI5, the chief of MI6. They were all warning from a big danger that your country is facing from Iran. We're talking about a few levels of domestic terrorism. We're talking about targeting our embassy. We're talking about the fact that Iran was a threat to the Jewish community in your country. So all those levels, your officials were saying very clearly that Iran is a threat to the UK. And for many years, I think we still share the same concerns. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he believes in Israel's right for self-defense. He said clearly that they share our concerns about the regime's nuclear program, and everyone agrees that Iran shouldn't have nuclear weapons. So I think this is where we all stand together. Now, this military operation, we call it a blue and white military operation. This is Israel's flag in the front of it. We thank very much to our American friends for helping us with defending Israel. But this is a blue and white operation, and we are doing a great service to Europe as well.
Because it's not just Jews and Israel both being targets from Iran. They've made that very clear, and having used Hezbollah and Hamas and Houthi rebels and every other proxy they can think of to foment attacks on Israel and on Jewish people around the world. They have made it very clear that after that you are the little Satan, and America is the big Satan. I think we're the little sister or the little brother of big Satan as well, aren't we? Iran has made it very clear that they want Western countries, including Britain, destroyed.
Yes, and this is why this is a threat to all Western civilization, and we believe we're fighting in the front line to help all the Western countries. And we hear, by the way, Western leaders. We heard the German Chancellor yesterday saying Israel is doing the dirty work for all of us.
Now, what did you make? German Chancellor Merz saying this? But we haven't had similar words from Keir Starmer or David Lammy.
And again, I think different leaders choose different wording for that. But I think the British government understands that Israel is doing significant
Are they behind
work.
The scenes a lot more supportive than they are publicly?
I can't really say that, because I think out loud they are saying that the Iranian regime is dangerous with its nuclear ambitions. So for us,
but asking Israel to de-escalate is saying don't finish the job.
We believe that only de-escalation will happen after Iran won't have its capabilities. Without it, we'll be in a place where Israel is in a danger of a nuclear holocaust. And my Prime Minister said very clearly, when Israel was established, we said never again, and we're not going to face another Holocaust coming from the Iranian regime. We're not.
Let's talk about the damage that has been done in Iran and the damage that has been done in Israel. You've got the Iron Dome, an extraordinarily amazing defence system, however, not foolproof. People have died in Israeli towns and cities. Family members of British staff at the embassy in Tel Aviv and the consulate in Jerusalem have been temporarily withdrawn. I mistakenly said in Iran. This was, I don't think we've got them in Iran at the moment, I don't know, but Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, the family members have been withdrawn. The US shut its embassy in Jerusalem until at least Friday, according to the State Department. So there is really real concern. The death toll in Iran, obviously as much as we can verify it from the Iranian authorities, same issues as we have with Hamas, probably.
It's a very different. Very different. I
just want to come to that. The people who are saying you've got these targeted attacks on military leaders, and literally they're in place for like 2 days, and then the next one is killed, on scientists, on military sites, on Iranian jets, on nuclear sites. The targeted attacks that have had minimal loss of life, given the extraordinary achievement of those attacks. People are making that comparison with Gaza and saying, why has there been such loss of life in Gaza comparative to...
How can you complain? In Gaza, we're dealing with architecture that is building the population as a human shield of Hamas. They build everything in Gaza to make sure that as many civilians will get caught in fire, and Israel is doing its best. We're always calling them to evacuate. We are having designated areas for the population to be out of harm. But in the end of the day, Hamas is using its own people as human shields. The opposite is happening in Tehran. We are calling them to evacuate, and the Iranian people are actually evacuating themselves and putting themselves out of harm. So this is a disciplined population. Really, we don't have any, fight with the Iranian people, as our Prime Minister always saying. We have a fight with the regime that wants to destroy Israel, and we want to make sure we want to have the capabilities to do that. And this is why it's such a different case, because we always try to evacuate the people before we attack. This is something is beyond our obligations according to the international humanitarian law, but we are doing it because we care about human life, and we are working very precisely. So I think we saw how impressive Israel's intelligence is, the Mossad, the intelligence
I really
services.
hope our authorities are as good as yours.
I think by the way, British intelligence is excellent as well, and they're close partners with us. And I'm saying that this is really something we've been working on for years, because the Iranians are working on this program for years. This is not in one night. We went to operate really in the last minute before it would have been too late for all of us.
Okay, and again, there's been some sort of mockery on some American TV shows about, it's always last minute, but that's
Julia,
because you always step in.
One thing, maybe from a personal point of view, because as we speak, all our family and friends are in bomb shelters. Yeah. The Iranians are targeting our civilians. They're not targeting military targets like Israel does. It's clearly they're targeting the most populated areas in Tel Aviv, in Herzliya, in Rishon LeZion, in Rehovot, my hometown. This is a place where every ballistic missile can create a damage of thousands of people that could have died if we didn't have a good defence services.
Let's talk about Donald Trump. He left the G7 summit in Canada early to go to the White House. He's been talking about, it's not about trying to deal with a ceasefire. He's put posts on social media saying he wants complete surrender from Iran. He's also talked about how the Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader, was an easy target. They knew where he was, but they wouldn't assassinate him, at least for now. He says, what is the likelihood that the Americans will join in this war effort, in particular in tackling this Fordow facility? This is Iran's nuclear site, believed to be huge amount of distance underground, under rock, and it's only the Americans that have got the sort of bomb capability where they could actually take that out.
Well, President Trump was sending very clear messages about the fact that Iran won't have nuclear weapons. It's for the president to decide, for the American interest We need to remind everyone, Iran was calling death to America, death to Israel, so they were calling death to America. So it's not like it's Israel's problem, it's really the West's problem, and America, as the leader of the West, they're facing and understanding how serious the threat coming from this regime. But it's for the president to decide. We went to this operation knowing that we will finish the job. And this is something that many people challenge Israel's capabilities. So I have a message. Don't challenge our capabilities. We are capable, we will do. And what you've seen in the last 5 days is a proof that Israel has proven capabilities. We did it in 1981 when we fighted Saddam Hussein's nuclear ambitions. We did it in 2007 when we were fighting Assad's beginning of a nuclear site in Syria. And I think the world owes a huge thank you to Israel for removing those two threats. And this is the third threat we're going to remove. And our Prime Minister is committed to the security of our people, and we believe we're doing a great service also to this continent.
A spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Ministry has warned in the last hour any American intervention would be a recipe for an all-out war in the region. Do you fear that?
Again, this is for Americans to decide whether they want to join that or not, and from our point of view, once the capabilities are removed, we finish the job.
I have to say, I'm here to express my opinion and not just to be a news reporter. I'm very grateful that Israel does the dirty work, as the Chancellor of Germany said, that perhaps the Brits and particularly the Europeans are very bad about getting their act together to do because of the threat that is posed to us.
We're not asking them. All we ask is solidarity with the Israeli people when we are in our Churchill moment. And you know, I take a lot of admiration from the way the British spirit was during the Blitz, and the Israeli people are facing something very similar when they know that ballistic missile can destroy whole neighborhoods, but still at the same time people keep themselves in good spirit because for one reason they understand we're doing the right thing.
What do you make? I mean, we had these protests on the streets, these pro-Palestinian protests and the like. We've had the people, you know, with Hamas flags supporting Hezbollah even, and now we've had people on the streets with Iranian flags, not the free Iran flag, but the Iranian Ayatollah flag, basically supporting, you know, saying how awful it is that Israel
I hope there is not even one woman carrying this flag, because they're prosecuting women and they're I don't know, the most radical regime. They're probably the most radical regime we have today.
Well, other than Afghanistan, but they're not so much of a threat to us, just to their own people.
A regime that really abolish every single human right you can believe and tortures on people. And I think that people are carrying Iranian flag in the streets of London should learn more about what this regime is doing, what this regime is capable to, and they need to think twice if they want to wave the Ayatollah flag in the streets of London.
Okay. Zipi Hotovele, Israeli ambassador to the UK, very much appreciate you joining us in the studio. Claire, I'm going to get your reaction in a few minutes. It's left rather too little time for that. Lots more coming up, lots more calls from you as well. In particular, the Tories claiming that grooming gangs are a border security issue, given how many suspects of sex abuse are now foreign or claiming asylum. Do get in touch. What is your reaction to that? 0344 499 1000. You can text on 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Lots more top guests coming up. More from Claire Pearsall and more from me. We are Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or a connected device, it is great to have your company. With you all the way until 1 o'clock. Coming up, we are going to be talking more about Donald Trump, saying he's considering a range of options to use against Iran, including a possible airstrike. This comes after the US president met with senior national security advisors shortly after sending a series of social media posts in which he warned Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, that the US knew where he was hiding, but they weren't going to kill him for now. So that's nice. Meanwhile, Israel and Iran entered their sixth day of fighting, with Tehran launching another wave of missiles at Israel. And Israel's just launched another wave of missiles at the capital, Tehran. This morning, as fears continue to grow, the conflict could escalate into an all-out regional war. My fears, though, I have to say, are that I'm worried about complete lunatic Islamist nutters running Iran having a nuclear weapon. So choices, people. Plus, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has warned that Labour's failure to tackle the small boats crisis risks fueling further grooming gang cases as more and more foreign criminals are using the border cares to slip into Britain illegally. We know that foreign nationals account for more than 1 in 4 convictions for sexual assault in Britain, and we know that a higher proportion of foreigners and asylum seekers are involved in some live cases. That Louise Casey, Baroness Casey, carried out that audit for the Prime Minister. That's what she found too. Plus, we're going to talk about abortion, because MPs voted last night overwhelmingly in favour of decriminalising abortion all the way up until birth. This means that women will no longer face prosecution for aborting their own baby for any reason or at any stage. Nothing to do with her health, nothing to do with whether the baby was viable or not. That amendment was backed by 379 votes to 137 last night. Incredibly worrying development in my view. Plus, don't forget to go to my YouTube page if you miss any of the show or you missed any of yesterday's show. It's cunningly called, this is brilliant, they came up with this, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. And it's easy to find, and you can hit subscribe, and then you will never miss a thing. I'd be very grateful for you to take a look. Right now, let me introduce you to Claire Pissell. She's a former Conservative government advisor and joins us for the whole show. Very good morning once again to you. You were in the studio as we were listening there to the Israeli ambassador to the UK, a regular visitor to this studio. And I have to say, it's one of those things, you know me, I'm always up for a row with someone I disagree with, but I'm not going to fake it if I don't. I am immensely grateful to the Israeli government for taking on Hamas, taking on Hezbollah, taking on the Iranians, particularly over the nuclear threat. It seems to me to be very, very clear. This is a preemptive defensive war against a vile, horrible government full of Islamist lunatics in Tehran, where they've been very, very clear and have expressly stated that it is their intention to wipe out Israel from the map, or every Jew, and indeed America and Britain, and yes, probably the rest of Western civilization as well. They've been very clear about it. They clearly are developing a nuclear weapon. The International Atomic Agency has made it clear that they are enriching uranium to a level where far beyond what they need for nuclear power, which they are allowed to do, although why an oil-rich state feels the need to have nuclear power, who knows? I'm sure they're very concerned about climate change. Very big issue in Iran, I'm sure. But, I mean, it seems to me this is an absolute no-brainer. I think the entire world's leaders should be saying, thank you, Benjamin Netanyahu, for doing the deed that we're too afraid to do. Talky talk ain't going to work. You need to actually walk the walk. First question, though. Should America get involved? Should Britain get involved?
It's really interesting that the ambassador was so incredibly diplomatic by saying this is a matter for the United States President, or that, you know, the UK Prime Minister has been very helpful and kind, without giving the opinion that we need to step up. I think we do need to step up, absolutely. I'm not going to speak for America because they have their own set of issues. They have their own president who can make those decisions. But yes, we need to step up. We need to be supportive, because if Iran gets out of control, builds those weapons, we are all in danger.
Yeah, I don't know why people think that's an issue.
No.
What do you make of Keir Starmer and David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, and what they've had to say so far? Because joining in these sort of, you know, EU calls for you know, de-escalation and calm and tensions in the region, there is this idea, I think particularly in the Labour Party, of this idea that you can talk through and negotiate anything. I mean, that's, you know, that's, I mean, again, Trump weirdly gets it on Israel, doesn't get it on Ukraine. You can just talk it through with Vladimir Putin. You know, some things you can't talk through. I'm not a believer that you negotiate with bullies. I think you just take bullies out and you just punch them in the face and deal with it that way.
Does anybody think that the Ayatollah is going to sit round a conference table over a cup of coffee and come up with some suggestions?
I did think you were all the Satan, and I did think that Jews were subhuman and had no right to exist on the planet, and that Israel had no right to exist, and that the US and Britain are the work of the, you know, of the devil. I did think that, but now I've sat round the table with David Lammy. Well, now I get it, and I'm happy for you all to carry on as you were, and I'm no longer a threat. I mean, are these people crazy?
Well, yes, they are. But also, I think probably a week ago I would have said let's urge a little bit of caution. Now we can see that this is ramping up. So we urged caution to begin with. Everybody settle down. The Iranians decided to pile over a whole load of missiles into Israel.
Now we are where we are.
And now we are where we are. So you have to change your tactic. And David Lammy going and sitting around a negotiating table, fills me with horror because it's David Lammy and I don't think he's very good at it. Yeah. But also, if we're not going to back it up by saying, if you don't behave yourselves, we're going to pile in behind Israel. But if we don't actually carry that through, then we will never ever have a presence.
But also,
there
I mean,
again.
Donald Trump was very clear, and I do think, I mean, you know, Biden and Obama were actually useless on this issue in the Middle East. But Trump was very, very clear. You know, you've got 60 days, and on the 61st day, when he pretends he doesn't know, who knows whether he knew or he didn't know. But you've had 60 days. You're not going to come to a deal in the 60 days. Well, tough. You know, you can't carry on enriching uranium and being a threat. The moment they have the bomb, and it is a very, very good point. Lots of people have made that North Korea developed a bomb and a nuclear bomb. We're pretty sure they've got a nuclear weapon, and now you can't take on North Korea because they've got a nuclear weapon and they're run by a madman. As a general rule, let's avoid mad people getting it's bad enough that anyone's got the nuclear bomb, but let's avoid the more mad people getting it. It seems to me to be a very good thing. I would absolutely support the Americans getting involved, and indeed us getting involved. Everyone's got to shy away from this idea that, oh, don't get involved because we'll be a target. They're already made, they've made us a target. They've told us. This is the thing, you know, it's like when, same with Hamas, same with Hezbollah, same with you know, the Iranian, you know, backers of those organisations, and, you know, the Islamists, you know, the Al-Qaedas, the ISIS, all of them. When they tell you who they are, when they tell you what they believe, when they tell you what they want and plan to do, believe them.
Yes.
Because they're telling us the truth. They actually do want us all dead.
Yeah.
So believe that and then act accordingly. And playing nicey nice isn't going to stop it from happening. Destroying them is.
Yeah. That's the language that they understand. But if anybody thinks that we don't have a target on us and that we're not high up on the list, needs to really think again. Because we always are. We always have been. Our security threat levels are high for a reason.
Well, the success of Western civilization and liberal democratic values is a threat to theocratic lunatics. We have to be gone.
Yep.
Anyway, there at the end of the lesson. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Also, particularly want to get your calls today on where we are in terms of the grooming gangs and in terms of border security, because those two stories have collided massively in the last few days. Not only did Baroness Louise Casey, the Labour peer who carried out that review for the Prime Minister, which changed him from saying that other people were jumping on a far-right bandwagon to say they needed a national statutory public inquiry, to him jumping on that far-right bandwagon. Welcome on board, Keir Starmer. Can I offer you a cold drink or a blanket to sit on? Would that make you happier while you join us far-right bandwagon jumpers calling for there to be a national inquiry? I mean, goodness me. But Louise Casey, pointed out that there was an issue in terms of people coming from Pakistan, Pakistani nationals and Pakistani heritage, where they were, yes, particularly responsible for this particular modus operandi of child sex abuse, these grooming gangs, but also of the live cases that she was allowed to look into. There was disproportionately a large number of foreigners and particularly asylum seekers. Well, yesterday, Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, said that grooming gangs are a border security issue, many suspects being now foreign or claiming asylum. Allies with stats out today showing that 1 in 4 of all convictions for sex abuse, sex crimes, not just children, but sex assaults, rapes and the like, are people who are born abroad, who are foreign nationals. And that's the bare minimum. It's at least 1 in 4. It's probably 1 in 3, looking at the stats that aren't collected. This is something that needs to be acted on, isn't it? We are importing criminals. Of course not everyone who comes to these shores is. Yeah. Of course not. But we're importing too many. What do we do about it? What's your reaction to that? Now, your number for you to call on is 0344 499 1000, and you can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. You can also leave a message on our YouTube page. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1 standard network rate message. But Claire Pissell, what is your response to that?
I mean, it's a sort of big deep breath moment, isn't it? Because it's relatively easy for all of those politicians to want to call for a state of emergency around the border. But what does that actually mean? What does it actually do? Are you actually going to do anything with it? And the answer to that is no. You need to now start looking at how you do protect your borders. What are you going to do with the people that are already in the country that need processing?
We're looking about 120,000 or something?
Just sitting around. So you need to look at that. And I don't care how many times Yvette Cooper said we're going to speed up processing. They clearly haven't. They've had 11 and a half months, still haven't made a dent into it, really. They've shuffled the numbers.
They have speeded it up compared to your lot, who were you were at the Home Office.
Quick.
Come on. What happened where the average official who was processing asylum cases was only managing 1 a week, other than working from home on Zoom? Sorry, walking the dog from home on Zoom.
There was no working from home on Zoom when I was at the Home Office. People were in there.
How can an official only? I mean, how complicated is that case? They can only manage 1 at a time.
Yes, they're complicated. Could you manage more than 1 at a time? Yes, absolutely. Because whilst you're waiting for information to come in on person A, you can carry on with person B, C and D at the same time. We didn't have enough people when I was there. That was the largest issue. We didn't have enough people processing them. You have to deal with delays from other countries if you're looking for information to try and get somebody's identity. That takes some time.
Because people throw away their documents.
People throw away their documents. Countries overseas aren't always as organised as perhaps the UK is when it comes to recording people's data.
Yeah.
So there are problems, but I think it became one of those millstones around everybody's neck, and it was allowed to get out of hand. And yeah, the Conservative Party need to hold their hands up and acknowledge that.
Do you understand why, when Keir Starmer throws out and does name calling, and that doesn't do him any good? I mean, I think he just looks like an absolute fool and a charlatan. He really does on that issue, and particularly when he then goes ahead with the thing that he accused people of being racist over by pulling for that national inquiry. But a lot of people, and again, I bring this up all the time. It just doesn't look very convincing that when the Tories are having a go over this issue, when you guys were in power for 14 years and did absolutely sum total of sod all.
And this is what I find very hard. I can't go and defend the Conservative Party because they are acting at the moment as if they had no skin in the game, which they absolutely did. So I think there needs to be a little period of reflection on some of those shadow ministers' behalves. What we actually need to do for the good of the country is to come up with a plan that's going to work and stop pointing the finger at each other and actually just do something.
I just don't understand why any of this is complicated if you actually care about whether or not you... I mean, here's the thing. Is it on balance a good thing or a bad thing that, 12-year-old girls of any ethnicity should be being raped by men of any ethnicity in the back of cars above kebab shops and transport? I mean, can we all agree that's a bad thing? Well, let's stop it. Well, the first thing you do is you'd arrest those men. There's so much evidence. There is so much. There was so much evidence. There is so much evidence. Again, reopening all these cold cases, the National Crime Agency, all the cases that were dropped because lack of evidence. There was plenty of evidence, so we just didn't believe the girls because, not surprisingly, girls who've been gang raped since the age of 11, funnily enough, might turn to drink and drugs and might have mental health problems like depression. Who would have guessed it, eh? I mean, proper mental health problems as a result. I suppose I feel a bit of anxiety about me GCSE this week. I mean, this is the thing. It's not beyond the wit of man. Again, I know these cases are complicated and compiling the evidence now, but there's a lot. Put these cases to juries, and juries have been very, very clear. Very few people who are accused of these crimes now, these cases are getting off. Okay, but one of the main things is when they are getting convicted, they ain't being sentenced to enough time behind bars, and when they do leave behind bars, they are not being deported. There is an abject failure at every single stage, from the moment a young girl is put in care and then becomes a bigger target. Yeah, 2/3 of these girls were in care. They've been failed at every single stage. I don't think we can call ourselves a proper country if we can't stop this from happening on a grand scale. There will always be bad people who can work through the system and who can break the law. We know that. But when it's happening on such a grand scale, in so many places, and there are so few prosecutions and so little action taken, and the cover-up has happened in the same way in the same places again and again, I just don't think we can call ourselves a serious country anymore.
Well, and this national inquiry is going to take some years. So
they say 3. It's not going to be 3, is it?
It's not going to be 3. So those victims who have already waited 20 years are now going to have to wait another, I don't know, say 5 years minimum for any kind of outcome. Yeah. Well, what good is this going to do? Because one, that's past the time of the next election, so it's going to get kicked into the long
but the
grass.
the Prime Minister will say sorry, and they'll say lessons will be learned.
And we should all sit around a campfire singing Kumbaya because of that. I mean, I just find this so depressing.
But are there things that we should do? And as we were discussing an hour ago, clear things, which is like maybe we should stop importing people from countries who there is a higher prevalence of this issue. I genuinely, we're looking at the stats in terms of Pakistani grooming gangs. You look at the stats in terms of organised criminality. I think there are arguments, Trump-style arguments, for saying, as a default, you cannot get a visa to come to this country if you are from certain countries where we've had a particular criminality problem.
Yeah, you absolutely.
Whether it's Pakistan or whether it's Albania, let's just say maybe we need to start. Again, we've got enough of our own criminals. We don't need to import everyone else's.
But you can also, by being tough on actually deporting the people once they have completed some of their prison sentence, I would like to deport them right in the beginning of that.
Well, not if they're not going to serve proper time behind bars. I just like prison to be a lot harder, and I want them to be sent to prison for 25 years for each rape. So sorry, I would like a lot more people going to prison in this country for horrible crimes and never coming out until they're in a coffin. I don't believe you can rehabilitate someone who organised the mass gang rape of a young child. But I don't believe there is any redemption for those people.
But if they're foreign national offenders, why should the British taxpayer pick up that tab?
Because
if they're convicted, I think they should go.
I would rather they were in a prison cell, in Lahore. Exactly. But I don't think they will be, because in large parts of Pakistan, it's not really considered a bad thing.
No.
The girls didn't cover up. They were therefore fair game. That's, I'm afraid, the view of a lot of those men. And a lot of the people, I'm sorry, even Imran Khan, who's fated all the time, and who's a disgusting, repulsive human being, who has justified his playboy, you can do anything you want, mate. You're an international cricketer, he's a good-looking guy, got away with it, well done, do it. But he then claimed, I don't know whether he is or isn't, now he's Mr. Muslim, isn't he? Yeah. He's all about, can he have his wife in a shroud, please? The usual stuff, because he wants to be a successful politician. Not so much anymore. But genuinely, he has justified, basically played the idea that, well, the women he had sex with, everyone knows about his Playboy antics. Well, they were those sorts of women. They were those, you know, those Western women who don't cover up. So, you know, they're fair game. That is the normal view in that country from a lot of men.
It is, and we don't need to import that, as you say, in this country. There are attitudes in this country that I find appalling from people who were born here. I don't need other people coming in. We need to straighten that out, and I think you need to have sanctions against those countries, and I think visas and the amount of visas and access to them is a really important starting point.
Yeah. Can I just find, just going to ask you about there's lots of talk about if we can't, you know, one of the problems we've got with illegal migrants, they know they can come here because we can't deport them. Whether they're going to then be law-abiding after illegally entering the country or not. And there's talk about maybe we could strip countries of their access to visas to come here for legal arrivals if they refuse to take back their people we want to deport. And if they won't take them back, well, then you can't have visas to come to this country. Do you think that would work? Do you think that, I mean, it would certainly be a justified policy, but do you think that would work?
I think in some countries, yes, it would. When you look at the likes of Pakistan, then that would have an effect. But Afghanistan, do you think that's going to change the Taliban's mind and those people leaving Afghanistan? No, not at all. Iran, Iraq, South Sudan. So those are the countries that we have the problems with, and we don't really have the visa regime with them anyway. So it's kind of something and nothing.
It looks good, but it won't actually make a dent or difference.
Correct. It looks very nice. It's caught some headlines. They look like they're thinking tough, but they're not.
And presumably also people will simply say, but I'm not from that country.
Yeah,
I haven't got the documentation. I throw it at the channel.
You get that a lot.
So much more to talk about. Look, we're going to be talking about that abortion vote coming up very soon. We're going to be talking to former Labour Party spokesman James Matthewson. He always makes a bit of a splash whenever he's on. Up next, we're going to take your calls in particular about where we are in terms of the grooming gangs and basically, you know, we've now got that crossover from the border security issue of the channel migrants and the grooming gangs. Love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. 11:23 is the time. This is Talk. Even asylum seekers, asylum claimants. Oscar says, like Labour, they are totally incompetent, the Tories, he says, and have zero cares about national sovereignty. Peter says, the Tories spent over 14 years in power and did nothing to actually stop the votes or ensure investigation, prosecution, jailing and deportation of these paedophiles. The Labour Party in power for 11 months now have continued this total failure and called anyone who spoke out far right. These failed parties care nothing about the welfare of the British people. Vote reform and get these grifters out. That's what he has to say. Glyn says, deport those found guilty. Anybody found guilty of a cover-up, the sentence should be doubled. Maya says they still allow these monsters to walk around the general population. Knowing this is happening, this government has zero morals. And Will says this goes deeper than new entries to the country. It's been going on for decades. Close the borders, yes, but don't use it to deflect from the historic abuse. Claire, I mean, those are all very fair points.
Yeah, they are, and I think this is the general mood of the country, and this is what the Labour Party should be listening to.
Absolutely.
Common sense coming in from your listeners.
I just think an awful lot of people don't trust anyone on any of this, and it's a very dangerous position for us to be in, and we don't trust people because we've got every good right and reason not to trust people. Let's go to, here she is. It's Georgina who's in London. Very good morning to you, Georgina. How are you coping with the heat first?
I'm loving the heat. I just can't sit out in it because all the plastic surgery I have, I will probably melt.
I love it. This is a wonderful insight. Georgina, what did you want to talk about?
Well, I want to talk about the seismic far-right shift of the Labour Party, Julia. The national inquiry that the Labour Party says it's going to undertake is just damage limitation. They've been shamed into this. It most definitely has not been brought about by a sudden influx of public duty or moral responsibility. Shame on them. They thought by calling anyone who pushed for an inquiry far right that this would be enough to scare them into silence. And sadly for them, it's not worked. In point of fact, this has only fueled the fire. And the push for a national inquiry has only gained momentum. Yeah. Meanwhile, this country has been submerged into cultural chaos. I've sat and watch various MPs on both sides being questioned about these horrific atrocities, and every one of them do not accept failings on behalf of their party, and they pass the buck. Yeah. But as soon as an MP undertakes the job, they are accountable, and they have a responsibility to get to the very root of the problems that affect our nation. And this is without a doubt one of the worst crimes that is happening and has happened in Britain.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, and it's on such a big scale, and by all accounts, happening at the same scale, if not worse, even today, even now. What do you make of the sort of the claims and counterclaims of politicisation of it? I mean, I thought Labour were outrageous the way they politicised it. It's far right to call for this, and let's face it, they're covering up for Labour councils where this is where it largely happened, and appeasing a Muslim community vote who, for some reason, seem to think will be unhappy about, groomers and rapists being arrested and prosecuted. But at the same time, the Tories saying, you didn't do it, when they didn't do anything for 14 years. It's all rather it's just rather off-putting, isn't it? And it kind of ignores the girls at the centre of this.
Absolutely. We are sick and tired of he said, she said, and it should not be happening now. Failings on both sides, Julia. The greatest stain, as I said, on our historical landscape. These children have and are being let down by the councils, caregivers, police, judiciary, and the present government. Everyone who has turned a blind eye is complicit in these horrific crimes. And it's worse now because it's been allowed to permeate our society without consequence.
Absolutely.
I don't have any faith in the globalist government that they will do anything to get to the bottom of of these horrific atrocities, because this rot goes to the very top.
And we know it goes all the way up from someone working in a care home not doing anything, a small, Mr. PC plod, social workers, hospital staff, all the way up to chief constables, all the way up to the Home Office, education department, civil service. It involves the blob, the civil service as well. This is and the media. I mean, God, we've the Emily Maitlisses and the Owen Joneses who are still pushing their complete lies to people. Is just extraordinary. Georgina, always great to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed. I'm just going to read out some breaking news. The Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, your friend and mine, the Iranian supreme leader, although he does have a good job title. I do feel strongly about a good job title. He's giving remarks, according to the Iranian media, what's left of it after the bombing of that propaganda station. He said that Israel has made a huge mistake in attacking the country, promising they will be punished, and saying people will not forget the blood of martyrs and the attack on their territory. Well, good luck with that, Ayatollah. Not sure it's going that well. I mean, come on, given that Israel was able to do a fly-past across the capital city of Tehran yesterday, I think we can safely say, it's kind of over, mate. Anyway, let's go back to the phone lines on 0344 499 1000. Karina is in South Wales. Karina, you're going to talk about a topic which we're going to talk to a guest on in just a few moments. You want to talk about the abortion vote last night?
Yeah, I don't know how we've not heard about it, because I watch Talk all the time.
Oh, it came out of nowhere, didn't it? It was just an amendment from a backbench MP.
And they can't rush anything else through.
Yeah.
For a start. Right, I'm adopted. And I was adopted at 6 weeks old.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wouldn't be here under that law.
Why?
Because my biological mother was from Ireland, and my biological dad was from Ireland. Abortion was illegal there in 1977. I got took to a nunnery Father Husband Times, it's called. My real mum and dad, not biological, but real mum and dad, picked me up from there at 6 weeks old.
Yeah. Okay, but here's the thing: this doesn't legalise abortion. They're saying that a woman wouldn't be prosecuted. Medical professionals who helped with an abortion that wasn't as a result of a mother's life at risk or health at risk, or the baby being unviable or health at risk, that they would still be prosecuted. They're just saying this law, the people who support it are saying this is to stop women being prosecuted and criminalised when they're in distressing situations and they make mistakes, or that they do something because they're being forced or coerced by a partner or whatever. That's their argument. What would you say to that?
There are situations where it should be allowed. But there are situations where if you just can't be bothered, it shouldn't be. And up to 39, 40 weeks, that's a full baby.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the difference, isn't it? Karina, thank you very much for your call. I really appreciate it, especially your own personal circumstances there. 11:33 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about Labour and, jumping on that far-right bandwagon with that call for the National Public Inquiry on grooming gangs. We're going to talk to James Mathewson, who's a former Labour Party spokesman. Up next, this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. 11:35 is the time. Let's go to my next guest. He's a former Labour Party spokesman, James Mathewson. Very good morning to you, James.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much, for joining us. Right, so what do you make of the man who's leader of the Labour Party right now? And I know you don't hold a candle for a lot that's been going on the Labour Party lately. They're a bit too right-wing for you already. But what do you make of the current Labour Prime Minister jumping on the far-right bandwagon of deciding to have a national public statutory inquiry into grooming gangs?
I think it's a good thing. I don't think there's any harm in it at all. And I do think that it's been called for and it's needed. And hopefully we'll get answers that people are looking for and give support to victims. I do think, again, with Keir Starmer, there's this precedent that's been set of not just U-turns, but saying things and then completely saying different things. So,
and then denying that he ever said the first thing. That's the bit I think
exactly,
really...
Yeah.
If he said, do you know what, I said it, and he's been asked repeatedly in interviews yesterday, do you regret saying that people, are jumping on a far-right bandwagon over this issue? And he said, no. He's basically, no, but it was politicians who did nothing for years and then did it. But he's been in power a year. Till 2 days ago, the policy was there wasn't going to be a public inquiry because that was a far-right bandwagon to jump on. But you're happy that he's jumped on it now. So it was a bad thing, and now it's a good thing, even though there's not a single fact that has changed in between.
It's messy, isn't it, for him? And this is, I think, his communication. I think this is his desperate need to try and constantly be seen to be telling the truth, that just comes out the opposite way and comes out disingenuous.
Do you think he has an urge to be seen to do
the time?
I don't think he has any urge to be seen to tell the truth. I think he thinks we're all complete imbeciles who have memories of goldfish and literally can't see or hear anything that happened 20 minutes ago. He genuinely, he literally stands there, Orwellian style, saying, I didn't say it. Like, I mean, you're literally on record saying it.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this with basically every major politician in every Western country for the past 10 years.
Kind
it's
of
like
the worst
denial of the truth, isn't it? You know, and it's kind of like, no, that hasn't happened. So, you know, not happy with that. Don't think it's right. The far right comments, you know, about the situation don't change in my mind. There is still a threat of the far right attached to this issue.
But there's only a threat from the far right because it was ignored for so long. Tommy Robinson was able to make hay over this. And actually, you know, for all his other sins, he was actually one of the few people for a long time speaking up about it. He didn't expose this story as many claim on his side. But he was pretty much the only person talking about this for a while.
No, not true. Not true. If you talk about somebody like Jess Phillips, you know, I mean, like, Jess has been doing work.
She wasn't talking about grooming gangs. She was talking about sexual abuse, and she did great work on that. Not so much since being in power, but she didn't talk about grooming gangs.
Yeah. No, but there are many, many people who've continued to do this work. I just think about the victims who've been shouting the whole time and not being listened to. People like Tommy Robinson, though, I'm sorry, we cannot give them credit. A broken clock is you know, stop clock is right twice a day. At the same time...
I'm saying that the people didn't talk about it because of the threat of the far right. At that point, not talking about it, creating the threat from the far right by giving them the ammunition of them saying, look, this is happening. You're all pretending it's not happening and you're doing it for the wrong reasons because you care more about community cohesion than you do about girls being gang raped at the age of 11. And he was right about that.
That is exactly...
He was right about it. He's not right about everything. I hold no candle for him and him for me. He was right about that.
That kind of summarises the situation in the Labour Party at the moment, I think, quite well, Julia, because there is just this fear about how to tackle the far right and how to deal with that element that exists in British politics, and this complete fear that grips the Labour Party about tackling it.
But it's a fear about tackling the far right that is greater... a fear of being called a racist that is greater than the need, the moral urgency of saving girls from being gang raped by men old enough to be their grandfathers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the motivations for each individual are, but I can tell you across the left and across the Labour movement as a whole, it's less a fear of racism and more a fear of the far right and how to say the right thing to tackle it. And you end up saying nothing, you're paralysed by it, and then, of course, you give them that vacuum.
But
and
that's
you allow
immoral,
them
isn't it? To genuinely, to be more worried about the far right, to be more worried about being called a racist yourself or saying the same thing that someone you dislike says, and caring about that more than the safety of little girls. That's immoral. Has the Labour Party not been immoral all this time?
No, I don't think anybody's been more concerned about that. I don't know. Like I say, I don't know the situation on the ground in these places where these things, horrendous things, have happened. All I know about are the values that I want to see from a progressive political party, which are feminist, right? So it should be speaking up for women and young girls anyway, naturally. And then obviously being about inclusion, being about community cohesion. It's not one or the other. It shouldn't be one or the other.
No, often it is, actually. Often it is, James. Well, this is the bit that the Labour Party and the left struggle with, is that when those two things collide, you should choose equality and the rights of women and girls and gay people or whatever over the rights of someone whose values and culture doesn't align with what was mainstream British values.
But that's the issue here, Julia, that we're going to disagree on, I'm afraid. I do not believe that somebody's culture makes them rape women. I do not believe somebody's culture makes them a danger to women. It is not culture.
Then you're wrong. Have you travelled in the Middle East at all? Have you travelled in the Middle East at all?
I'm not.
No, it's a question. Because as a woman, I've travelled in the Middle East a bit. I can assure you, I am definitely less safe in certain cultures than I am in others. And I'll tell you why. It's because when women who are not covered up are regarded as basically slags, whores, available, easy, when you have that attitude to women, and loads of cultures do, then women are a greater risk. They are less safe, and they are treated as second-class citizens. So when you have when you have people coming to a country from this country who think that slicing off bits of women's genitalia is good for them, FGM, when they believe that girls should be basically covered up, and that they should have male guardians and that they should be married off, that they should cover up their faces even. When you have that, you must accept that when that clashes, when that comes up against, as it does, with a great big bang, Western liberal democratic values that we claim to have in this country, you got to pick a side. And I know which side I pick. Which side do you pick?
I'm sorry, I don't see the world like that, though, Julia. I mean,
well,
you're
that's
talking about
nice for you, but the world is like that.
If you let me just put my argument across. So when you look at those countries and you talk about those issues, are you talking about Italy? Are you talking about the Vatican, where you can't, as a woman, you can't be without being covered, or without covering your hair? Are we talking about
I'm
Jewish?
not, mate, and you know I'm not.
Well, that's the case, because we're not, are we? We're talking about countries predominantly that are Muslim.
Yes.
And we're talking about those areas where Islam, and I just think there has been such a campaign of Islamophobia over the past 10 years, 15 years in Britain, where this is played into that narrative. If you talk to people now, the word Muslim is almost interchangeable with the term foreign or the term immigrant.
Not to any of the people I talk to.
British Muslim.
There are other countries where women also don't have equal rights. It is a particular issue in some, but not all, Muslim majority countries. But it's particularly an issue in the Middle East and in certain parts of Africa and elsewhere and further east. And it is a simple matter of fact. Women don't have equal rights in those countries. In many of those countries, it's not even legal to rape your wife because you're allowed to have your wife at any time. I'm sorry. I think you're living in a fantasy land. It's very, very simple. When you have two cultures coming up against each other, your view on the left is that multiculturalism is great and that all cultures and belief systems are of equal value. I consider that to be not just wrong, but to be immoral, because the reason why women have equal rights in this country, why we've had 3 prime ministers now who've been women, why women can largely walk on the streets, have equal pay, and things like that, is because we view women in a certain way. An awful lot of societies, and I hate to tell you, a lot of them are Islamic based, don't view women the same way. Saudi Arabia, the women are allowed to vote in local elections, and now they've been allowed to drive, which is really nice of them. But they still can't basically leave the house without their male guardian, or travel abroad without a male guardian or without permission. So I mean,
these countries take their religion and they twist it for use of control, as has happened in many.
Same with the burqa again. But the point is, when you come up against a culture, it doesn't have to be Muslim. When British values come up against a culture which is opposed to those values, which side do you choose? You think you can have both. You can't both cut off a girl's clitoris and sew her vagina up, and cut off a girl's clitoris and sew her vagina up. It's FGM or it's not FGM, isn't it?
I do not believe that multiculturalism is the cause of the violence against women and children that we see perpetrated.
It's not the cause, but it's the reason it wasn't stopped.
It simply is not the reason.
It's the reason it wasn't stopped. The concern about community cohesion.
Men have been getting away with these crimes everywhere. Glasgow,
but they got away with it more because there was a concern that don't speak out because they're different from us and everyone will call us a racist. Sorry,
to say that Tommy Robinson's done good work on this is outrageous. 40 miles from me, Julia, a gang of white men rounding up and raping women in Glasgow, right, and raping young girls in Glasgow, right? Where was he then? Where was Tommy Robinson?
But the point is that when that was found out, one assume, I don't know that I read about it, but I don't have the details to hand. That I'm not saying, good God, I'm making you really listen. If you can look at enough social media to know that Tommy Robinson and I don't see eye to eye on anything, I'm saying that you guys gave succor to people like Tommy Robinson because when he was pointing out facts about these grooming gangs, and you lot were all going, oh, no, he's just horrible, racist and far right. You gave him succor. You created him.
Firstly, it wasn't me. It had nothing to do with this.
The left.
It's nothing me as the face of the left, who nobody knows. I mean, absolute nonsense. But then also on top of that, Julia, this is what happens. This is what happens when people use people. right? The likes of Tommy Robinson are just as culpable as those who've covered up whatever they've covered up, because they have used people for their own political ideology, and that has delayed things. Because if somebody looks at Tommy Robinson as an advocate for them, they think, well, obviously there's no
Well, if no one else
here,
is advocating for
Why
them,
would you?
then they will turn to whoever they need to turn to. This is a fault of the left.
And that's why I don't blame the victims.
At the end of the day, you're still saying when you've got a choice between a medieval culture, in terms of some of the views, regardless of religious background, any medieval culture and their views towards women and women's safety versus British values, balance, not the values that all rapists and paedophiles share, but nevertheless society generally shares and our law shares. You're saying I can't pick between the two of them. We'll have to combine them. That is where the British people just go, are you insane? You can't have both. Pick a side.
False dichotomy, and it just seems time and time again that people are bothered against girls. Well, not you, because I know you talk out about it, rightly so all the time. But these people, lots of these people, only talk about assaults against women when it's committed by men with brown faces. Men are the problem. Gender is the problem.
Some men, not all men, some men are the problem. The main reason people talked about it, the men you say, your quote, men with brown faces, was because they were the men not being prosecuted when it was identified because of their ethnicity and their religious background. That was the issue. We're going to have to leave it there. Time's again. It's James Mathewson, former Labour Party spokesman. I'm going to take a breath. Claire Pearsall.
I was quite enjoying that because I can't believe the mental gymnastics that James can go through with this, when also he needs to look at a former Labour MP, Anne Cryer, who was the MP for Keighley, who stood down at the 2010 election, who was the first one to call out and suggest that immigrants to this country need to learn English. She also raised Yorkshire cases with mainly Pakistani men being
the grooming gangs. And what happened to her?
Lost her career.
So she was basically told, shut up or you're out.
She had death threats against her.
Absolutely. From the left.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. 11:49 is time. We're going to take a break. Then we're going to be talking about that abortion vote. I promise I'll have more time for that later as well. This is Talk. Of unborn children, and is here to talk about that vote by MPs last night with a huge majority, almost entirely Labour MPs, voting to decriminalise abortion for women in England and Wales. Good morning, Monica.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. In terms of this vote, it was a landslide vote. It was an amendment that was amendment to a crime bill going through Parliament. Was it like 45 minutes or so of debate? I don't think anyone was barely aware of it until even yesterday. We talked about it on the show yesterday. But it decriminalised the procedure. It's the biggest change to abortion laws in this country for nearly 60 years. What does it actually mean, though?
So it's been a whirlwind of a week for the pro-life movement. What we're seeing here is a real culture of death, and we're seeing an abolition of empathy. We're going away from women being able to make the decision to protect life and save their unborn and think about them, and moving more towards people's selfish needs. And the statistics don't lie. This isn't a popular vote, even by people who are outside of the pro-life movement. But we will keep fighting and put that energy and focus into fighting these cruel amendments within the House of Lords.
Okay, now you give me your opinion rather than what this actually means, because What it actually means is it's still going to be, it's legal to get an abortion up to 24 weeks with two doctors' agreement if there is a risk to the safety of the woman, health of the woman, or the unborn child is going to be severely deformed in some way, severely handicapped in some way, or is unlikely to live. Now, the vast majority of abortions happen very early, around the sort of 12-week mark. A lot of women, of course, don't know they're pregnant until around that time, if they have irregular periods and haven't been trying for a baby. And we know that most babies actually in this country, even in marriage, are accidents. So there are very few cases where we have late abortions anyway, and largely they are for reasons to save the mother's life or because babies are going to be severely deformed and unviable. This is about those women. I think there have been 60 cases, but very few have actually ended up going to court. And I think where they have a woman, at least the last case, she actually was found not guilty by the jury, accused of basically deliberately taking abortion pills, deliberately trying to abort their unborn child much later in pregnancy when the baby is viable, would be regarded by many people who take a different position as you, but as having acquired right to life. Why does it matter whether that woman who does that, for whatever reason, is criminalised or not?
Well, it's an unprotected life, and that life starts at gestation, and that's not something that we should forget. On top of that, only 5% support extending the abortion limit up to birth. So this isn't a popular opinion, even outside.
I think that the limit to legal abortion has not been extended. That's important to say. You're just not going to be prosecuted if you do it. I'm certainly opposed to this change in the law, and we discussed it with a doctor who was very much in favour of it yesterday, because it seems to me that I don't agree. I don't believe that life begins at conception. I just think that's just not practical, and I think women make mistakes happen. We know an awful lot of abortions now are women in their 30s who are in long-term relationships but cannot cope with having a child, or marriage is just broken up. They want to raise a child on their own. People make choices. Not ideal, never a good thing. Sometimes, often, the least worst thing. However, I think that we need to have acceptance that babies at some point accrue rights, whether you think it's at conception or I would say, from 24 weeks possibly, and it accrues, that we need to come to some sort of middle ground. This isn't a middle ground though, is it?
No, it's not. And I think that's the thing in our society. Abortion is not something that should be taken lightly.
Yeah.
And as I read in a great article in The Spectator today by the wonderful Melanie McDonagh, a quote from her is, are we meant to think that women in these situations are always desperate, never motivated by malice, never out for revenge, never callous or cruel or casual about unborn life? Are we in short denying women these responsibilities for their actions? And it looks like it to me. So I think that's very telling of it goes beyond that.
Well, that's it. It's interesting, the number of people who are speaking up on this, particularly Labour MPs and some of the women campaigners, were saying, look, this is a feminist issue. This is about reproductive rights, and they were talking about women who are aborting a baby because they're being in an abusive relationship. They're being coerced. They've got mental health issues, and seeing the women as victims, but then empowering them to do what they choose to do in some cases, whereas there would be a concern, I think, on the other half that a woman could be forced by a coercive partner to take an abortion pill to abort a perfectly healthy baby because the partner, the abusive partner, doesn't want her to have the kid. I mean, it could work both ways, couldn't it?
Absolutely, and with the pills by post scheme, that's the awful thing. There was a study that was done recently over the past few years with people calling people up on the phone and seeing if there's any way that people can actually detect whether that abusive partner is a part of this and abusing.
And this is about getting these pills, the abortion pills, online. So the doctor doesn't examine a woman and says, oh yes, okay, you're 20 weeks pregnant or whatever. This is about a woman can lie about how pregnant she is, and you don't know if the man is sitting in the room saying, say this.
Yes, so you don't need an in-person consultation, and that is terrible for women. That's no feminist or self-proclaimed feminist should be taking that position. And those pills are often lying around. Some people put them in their bags and they overdue their. It's very, very dangerous to have to facilitate that for yourself. And it is one of the worst things that we've had come out of COVID, in addition to COVID itself. But it's awful.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, again, I lost 4 babies to miscarriage myself, so I know what an unborn child looks like, and I have to say, it is one of those things. I find it quite repulsive that, I mean, I was a feminist through and through, and I don't believe in the sort of the religious argument about life starting at conception, but I find it quite repulsive when some feminists think that this is a women's rights issue and it's a victory, and that abortion is somehow just like any other operation. It involves another life. It clearly isn't.
Absolutely. And yes, as I said, 64% agree that abortion is a matter of life and death, therefore appropriate that criminal law provides a clear boundary to protect everyone involved. So the fact that it goes so deeply against public opinion is telling, and I think that people will keep fighting against this.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, extraordinary to have a legal change that just happened literally, there it's just suddenly happened. No public debate about this at all. Monica Ushkalnita, thank you very much for joining us. She's from the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children. I'm going to give Claire Purcell a chance to come in. When we come back from the break, we're going to take PMQs live. We're going to take the beginning. I'm going to see who turns up for the Conservatives, but we know it's Angela Rayner in for the Prime Minister, which usually makes quite a lively deputy PMQs. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 2 minutes past 12 o'clock. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us or joining with us for the final hour of the show. Claire Purcell is also still here, former Conservative government advisor, and joining us in the studio to watch and talk about what is Deputy PMQs today is Talk presenter and political commentator Peter Caldwell.
Hello.
Very, very, very good afternoon to you. Angela Rayner's just got to her feet. The Deputy Prime Minister standing in for the Prime Minister, already on his way back from Alberta in Canada from the G7 summit. And we now know up against her will be Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp. No official sort of deputy leader, is there really, for the Conservatives? Had been some expectation that Kemi Badenoch might take this role. She, of course, took on the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper early in the week on the grooming gangs issue. No doubt that's going to come up. Also, the issue, Claire, you and I have been talking about throughout the show, not just the grooming gangs, but also the border security issue, suspects of sex abuse. We know now from Baroness Casey's report, often foreign, often claiming asylum. We also know, 1 in 4 sex assaults, the people who are prosecuted are foreign in this country. The stats are adding up that we've got a problem.
And if I was Angela Rayner, I'd be quite concerned that you haven't got any answers to these questions at PMQs, because you can see that Chris Philp, shadow Home Office, shadow Justice, he's been in those positions whilst in government as well. He'll know his stuff.
He knows his facts.
Sharp against her on that one, and she isn't going to have a comeback.
I wonder if that abortion vote's going to come up as well. Now, we're going to go to it live when we see those exchanges from the front bench. Well, there's usually a couple of questions from backbenchers first. But Claire, I just want to give you a very quick chance to come back in on that abortion debate we were just having. Well, not a debate, because, well, actually, we've had 2 guests on yesterday and today whose position, I think, are both on the extremes in terms of this decriminalisation of abortion all the way up to 9 months. But I'm not where I think most people in this country, particularly most women, which is where I am, which is that, it should be legal to a certain point, but then it should be a criminal act.
I'm not sure why we needed to have this debate, well, not even a debate, 45-minute conversation in the chamber. Why has this come up now? Why was this buried in amongst 308 pages of crime and policing bill?
No proper public debate.
No proper debate on it, no scrutiny of it, and that's it. It's just gone through. We don't need it. I don't think most people want it to go through.
No, well, the polling is really very, very clear. I mean, I think a lot of people, again, not really understanding, but it's interesting to see some people sort of talking about how, this is pushing, women's reproductive rights, and it's like, this is not a reproductive right. Your right to abort your baby at 8 months or 9 months is not a right that most women want. Thank you very much.
I support the women's right to have access to a safe abortion, but there has to be a limit, which we have in this country. I think that anything past that needs to be dealt with on a medical basis.
Yeah, and indeed. And again, our 24-week time limit is one of the latest, certainly in Europe. But I certainly think 6 weeks or 12 weeks in some countries in America, some American states, is far too early, because a lot of women simply don't know they're pregnant at that time. But it is interesting, I mean, how strongly so many women think about this. And I hate it that it becomes like a sort of a feminist issue. This is a practical issue. This is about some women are going to need abortions for whatever reason, and they're going to try and get them, and we need them to be safe, legal, but rare.
Yes.
And a law that says you're not going to be prosecuted for criminality if you just decide, for whatever reason. Look, if there's mental health issues, if there's coercion issues, and a woman attempts to abort her baby at a very, very late time of gestation, then the jury will deal with it. Right, we're going to go straight to the chamber, and we're going to watch Prime Minister's questions. Chris Philp up asking his first question.
Prime Minister's remarks about the tragic air crash in India, and of course what she said about our dear colleagues Joe Cox and Sir David Amess. I also join her in calling for de-escalation between Israel and Iran, while noting everything possible must be done to stop Iran getting a nuclear weapon. Yesterday, the Leader of the Opposition and I met with survivors and family members of the rape gang scandal. Fiona, Teresa, Lucia and Marlon. They told us how authorities deliberately covered up the systematic rape of young girls and some boys by gangs of predominantly Pakistani heritage men. They covered it up because they cared more about so-called community relations than about protecting vulnerable girls. That is disgusting. The survivors told us they will only have confidence in an inquiry if it is independently led, has full statutory powers, covers all 50 towns affected, including Bradford, if those who covered this up are prosecuted, if foreign perpetrators are all deported, if survivors are closely involved, and if it is set up before the summer recess. Can the Deputy Prime Minister give the survivors and their families those assurances?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, first of all, can I thank him for his tone and putting the survivors and victims at the heart of his question here today. I think it's absolutely right that we all look at what's happened over the last couple of decades, the countless reports that we've had, and we look to implement that. He's absolutely right to also talk about the confidence people must have in that independent inquiry. And the member that my friend, the Shadow Home Secretary, spoke about that earlier this week in regards to Baroness Casey's report. So we will take that forward at speed, Mr Speaker. It will be independent, it will have statutory powers, and we will implement the J report, which was he will have known about as the Shadow Minister in charge. The Minister in charge at the time, and we'll get on with taking the action. I hope members of his party will take his tone in making sure the whole House put the victims first and we all work together to get to the bottom of it.
Well, I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for her answer. It is vital that scandals like this are never again covered up because of the racial background of perpetrators. And Baroness Casey's report said people who downplay the ethnic dimension are letting victims down, to use her words. So I do have to raise the language the Prime Minister used in January when he, I'm afraid to say, smeared campaigners as jumping on, quotes, a far-right bandwagon, simply for calling for the very inquiry he has now been forced to set up. Standing up for rape victims is not far-right. So will the Deputy Prime Minister apologise for what the Prime Minister said?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I say, Mr Speaker, that the Prime Minister did not just raise issues but acted on them. He brought the first prosecutions against grooming gangs, called for action to address ethnicity issues in 2012. And the honourable member will know that the data that the previous government collected was inaccurate and not complete. And Casey recognised this, and it's one of the recommendations that we will be taking forward. The Prime Minister made those comments specifically about Tory ministers who sat for years in the government and did absolutely nothing about this scandal.
Smearing campaigners standing up for rape victims as far right is completely unacceptable, and the Prime Minister should never have said that. And I commend his predecessor, the member for Richmond, for the grooming gangs task force he set up, which led to 550 arrests in its first year. Now, Baroness Casey's report also said that a significant number of rape gang perpetrators were non-UK nationals or were asylum seekers, many of whom entered the country illegally. And we know, of course, that most illegal immigrants crossing the Channel are young men, contrary to what the Chief Secretary said last week. So does the Deputy Prime Minister now accept that the small boats crisis is a crisis of public safety as well as a border crisis?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, this is a very serious issue and more needs to be done. And let me update the House. Working with our allies, we've carried out a series of major arrests to tackle smuggling gangs behind this vile trade. In the past month, a ringleader that smuggled almost 4,000 migrants has been jailed for 25 years. We could go further thanks to the law enforcement agreements we struck with Germany, Italy, Serbia and the Balkan states. In stark contrast to the honourable gentleman, he was the man at the heart of the Home Office when immigration soared. We lost control of our borders and spent £700 million of taxpayers' money on persuading just 4 volunteers to be removed from Rwanda. I take no lectures.
If she wants to find out who's lost control of our borders, I suggest she looks to her immediate right. Because ever since the Home Secretary scrapped the Rwanda deterrent before it even started, illegal immigration across the Channel has gone up by over 30%. And so far this year, 2025 has been the worst year in history for illegal immigrants crossing the Channel. That is on her watch. That is down to her government. The Prime Minister is now planning crisis talks with President Macron, finally admitting, in his own words, that the situation is deteriorating. The government's laughable plan to smash the gangs lies in tatters. So will she now at last accept we need a removals deterrent so every single illegal immigrant arriving on these shores is immediately removed? Will she commit to that, yes or no?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, if they want to argue that 40,000 arrivals since July 24 are down to the scrapping of the Rwanda scheme, they need to explain why there were more than 43,000 arrivals in the same period starting in July 22 when the Rwanda agreement was in place. It's absolute rubbish, Mr Speaker. They lost control of our borders. We're getting control of our borders. He needs to apologise.
I don't see how she has the brass neck to claim she's got it under control. When the numbers crossing the channel this year are the highest in history. She asked about the Rwanda deterrent. I'll repeat, she obviously wasn't listening to what I said earlier. The Rwanda scheme never started. And indeed illegal immigrants in Calais said they were...
Order! Order! Just do it. I want to hear the question, and I'm sure our constituents want to hear the question and the answer. Crystal.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Rwanda scheme never started. Illegal immigrants in Calais were saying before the election how much they wanted the Prime Minister to get elected because he would help them get here. When Australia started a similar scheme about 10 years ago, it worked within a few months. Now, Mr Speaker, as a consequence of the government losing control, they are now accommodating growing numbers of illegal immigrants, many of whom cross the Channel, in asylum, hotels and flats. The Home Office's suppliers are now actively offering above-market deals to landlords to get hold of their properties to be used for illegal immigrants. In the meantime, hard-pressed young people here are unable to rent or buy. So why is this government prioritising housing for illegal immigrants above housing for our young people?
So again, Mr Speaker, I gently say to the right honourable member opposite that under their watch, immigration increased fourfold until it reached almost 1 million in a single year. They also created the backlog, 400 hotels, which we've reduced to just over 200 hotels in the first 12 months of us being in government, Mr Speaker. £1 million a day spiffed up the wall because they were so incompetent. We're building the homes that they failed to deliver over 14 years of consecutive failure by their government. They should apologise while we get on with the job of rebuilding Britain.
Goodness me, she's got a cheek. Housing starts in Q4 last year went down. Her mission to rebuild Britain is not going very well. She talks about asylum hotels. She obviously hasn't looked at the most recent numbers. The number of people in asylum hotels was higher in March this year than it was at the time of the last election. And she gave no answer about the priority being given to illegal immigrants over people living here already. Now, Mr Speaker, a Zimbabwean paedophile due for deportation was recently allowed to stay in the UK because a court found he might face, quote, some hostility back in Zimbabwe, apparently breaching his Article 3 rights. What about the rights of children here to be protected from this dangerous paedophile? Who's looking out for their rights? Not the government. There are thousands of cases like this involving foreign criminals. So there is a solution. We need to scrap the Human Rights Act for immigration matters so this sovereign parliament decides on the law our courts apply. But her party voted against that. So I have a simple question. Why did the government side with foreign criminals and not the British public?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, again, Mr Speaker, they had 14 years of failure on these issues. We've also included 4,500 foreign national offenders that have been deported since we came into office, Mr Speaker, more than they did in the same period. I take no lectures from the Johnny-come-lately who couldn't do anything when he was in office.
And Elise Midgley.
Right, we are
Mr.
back
Speaker.
as we expected. That was a pretty lively exchange there between the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner standing in for Keir Starmer and the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp standing in for the Kevin Badenoch, the Tory leader. I have to say, given that he actually worked in the Home Office, he does know his stats, does he not? Let me come to Peter Cardwell first. It's joining me in the studio along with Claire Pearson, of course. Peter, I mean, I thought Chris Philp did a darn good job there. There was a bit of toing and froing in terms of stats, it was very clear that Chris Philp didn't have to look at his. He knew those stats. He was able to come back.
He's always been good on detail. I used to work with Chris Philp. He's very good on detail. He knew the stuff. He was completely unperturbed by any single thing that Angela Rayner said. Really weird tone there. So first of all, the very kind of sort of conversational tone, very respectful to the victims. Angela Rayner then said, very good that the Conservatives aren't politicising this, that they're talking about the victims. Then as soon as he asked her if she'll apologise for the far-right charge, she then deflects and then attacks Tory inaction on the issue. So it becomes politicised very quickly.
I think it was fascinating that her first answer was all about actually thanking the opposition for his tone.
Didn't last long.
The left, yeah, I know, but the left is obsessed with words and hurty words and how things are said as opposed to some actual facts. Claire Pearsall, what do you make of it?
You always see this when it's the stand-in deputy week, is that it does tend to start off quite collegiate. Everybody's sort of playing a little bit nicely.
And all paying tribute to people and things like that.
And when you're talking about victims, you have to be respectful, as you should be. But then it quite easily descends into personal slights against each other. But the thing is, Chris Philp absolutely outclassed Angela Rayner.
Well, I mean, again, I think, let's face it, he's someone who masters a brief rather better than Angela Rayner does, with all due respect. But I mean, here's some phrases he was saying. You know, she's got a brass neck, she's got a cheek, talking about things like that. But lost control of the border. Look to your immediate right. There's where Beck Cooper, the Home Secretary, was sitting, scrapping the Rwanda deterrent. Now, they threw around a load of stats. And nevertheless, Angela Rayner has a strong grounds to stand on when she points out you were in power for 14 years. Not just that, Chris Philp, it's not like he was a backbench MP. He worked in the Home Office.
The policing minister, that's right.
I mean, they know he had, he was in the department which has seen this abject failure. So, I mean, I don't know how long, Peter, that the Labour Party can say, yeah, but you lot didn't do anything.
Well, very soon, literally in a matter of weeks, it's going to be a year, and I think that's the point.
Is that the deadline? We go,
I think that's when you stop saying 14 years and you stop saying we're clearing up the mess. Well, they're going to continue saying that. They know it works, but the problem was when Cameron and Osborne in 2010 said we're clearing up the mess of Blair and Brown, they had a plan. They had a very, very clear view of what they wanted to do. You may have disagreed with it, but I think it's very interesting as well that Angela Rayner wasn't correct on basic facts there as well. She said the Rwanda scheme was operational.
Yeah, in 22.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. Never became operational.
Yes.
And again, that was because of the legal challenges.
Yeah.
That said, it does annoy me. People still bang on about the idea that the Rwanda scheme is similar to the Australian work. It wasn't anything remotely. It was on a tiny scale. It might have provided a small deterrent for some cases, but it wasn't going to solve the problem. No one thought it would actually solve the problem. Even the Tory ministers, come on, you worked in the Home Office, Claire, they didn't think it was going to. But it's interesting, this combining of the grooming, I mean, these are two massive talking points on the right, not the far right, on the right, I would say in the middle, people who are genuinely, sensibly and rightly concerned about grooming gangs and the failure, and again, the reason why they're a story, the failure to tackle them for years because of these so-called concerns over community cohesion and racism, but also combining that with the issue of our borders, because that is now a mainstream issue. They thought that was just, that's those people over there who worried about this. And this is the problem with the left. They constantly talk about these issues as if it's just Nigel Farage who's worried about these things. No, this is what most people are concerned about now.
It is, and it just goes to show that James Mathewson, your guest of earlier, going on about multiculturalism and it wasn't the problem and everything is fine. And that is what they believe, that anybody that questions it is automatically bigoted, racist, nasty, far right. And they can't see that actually there are problems within cultures, there are problems with integration, and there are problems with people coming into this country. And you can say that. It isn't racist to do so.
Well, the left believe in moral relativism.
Yes.
There's the idea that all morals are kind of equal. Well, they're not. I mean, they're just not. I mean, here's the giveaway. There is not a mass load of people from Britain going, I can't wait to go and move to Saudi Arabia or to Pakistan. I literally can't wait to get to these countries with their fantastic, wonderful economies and wonderful freedoms. No, funnily enough, they're not. And yet there are huge numbers of people from these countries who want to come here. Why? Because our freedoms and our economy and our values, things are all massively interchanged. They're what's called our culture. And people come here, and the key thing to ask, and the only thing to ask of people coming here is like, well, two things. Are you an economic benefit to us? because to us, not to you, and two, are you going to actually assimilate and ally yourself with the values of our country? And if you're not, then we shouldn't be opening the doors to them. I mean, I think this is where we're going to be. I think in 10 years' time, this is going to be a view of the Labour Party, because they'll have no choice on this issue. In terms of overall who won, who lost, Peter Cardwell, you think clear win for
Clearly,
Chris
Philp. I think Angela Rayner has been feisty. I think when she faced Oliver Dowden previously, she was winning.
They had a little bit of a kind of little flirty spot.
I don't think there was any of that between her and Chris Philp. Alex Burghardt previously did quite well. It's interesting, actually. We're seeing some of the opposers coming through. We're seeing people like Robert Jenrick, like Chris Philp, to a degree, Alex Burghardt. There are a couple of others as well.
I don't think most people could name out.
No,
I couldn't spot. If he walked in here right now, I'd go, and you are.
But not Kemi Badenoch. You know, I think Chris Philp was not only better than Angela Rayner, he was better than Kemi Badenoch has been on any occasion when she has done Prime Minister's Questions.
Because there's an element where it was like surgical precision there, wasn't there? Yeah. Claire Purcell, what did you make? And now often we have, by the way, a Labour representative in the studio, on the line at least, so we get different perspectives on this. But you're like me, you tend to speak non-party politically on these things.
Yeah, I mean, just look at what's happened, look at the conversations, and Chris Philp was by far better. He knows his stuff. He did it clearly and concisely, and you can see that it has rattled the Labour benches. Not just Angela Rayner, but if you looked behind her on the front bench with the Home Secretary, the Leader of the House sitting there, they were busy asking the person behind, who is the PPS to the Deputy Prime Minister, so Chief Note Passer.
Give me some information.
Give me some information. We need some lines now. And that was a panic.
They don't prep. I see this with...
I think she was underprepared.
She was underprepared. And you cannot be underprepared. You need to be from 6 a.m. onwards prepping up with every fact and have it to your hand.
The second you know it's Chris Philp, the second you know it's Chris Philp,
going to be grooming gangs and
grooming gangs, immigration, it's so clear. Rwanda is clearly going to be that. Why didn't she have all of that at her fingertips?
But I think this is a general issue with this government. And again, I know that I thought the last lot were pretty hopeless a lot, but at least they thought they may have not get anything done. They were largely quite clever and quite, well briefed and things. I mean, even if they abjectly failed on a million different things, I don't think this lot are very clever. I don't even think that, the people who've got degrees coming out of their backsides, like Keir Starmer, are actually very clever. I think they kind of failed upwards somehow. They don't seem to be asked their brief. The fact that they constantly do things like say things where, calling people far right for saying maybe we should do something about the grooming gangs. I mean, really? The fact that they then say, Taunton says, all these statements didn't really say that we did. They do massive U-turns and then deny it's a U-turn. They treat us as if we're as stupid as they are, and we're not.
I think the problem, especially less so with Rayner, but certainly with Starmer, is that he's just not political enough. He doesn't have enough political experience. He's never been in the trenches. He doesn't understand what it is to pound the streets and knock the doors and talk to the voluntary members who are far more of any political party than any other group of people.
And you think the rarefied existence and the little barrister
exactly. And then when you do things like, I'm going to take away people's winter fuel allowance. I mean, a blind man on a galloping horse would know that is going to be an absolutely stupid political move, which is going to affect an awful lot of people, all of whom will be very, very vocal about it. And you're going to have the U-turn.
And you lie about the reasons why you're doing it, and then you lie about the reasons why you're not doing it. Look, we've also had, even in the last 24 hours, absolutely disastrous number 10 briefings. They give these briefings, they've got these question and answer sessions with the lobby journalists who are becoming increasingly irritated with them, which is amazing considering I'm pretty sure most of these people voted for the Labour Party.
So I'm allowed to go to those. I'm allowed to go to those. I usually don't because they're a waste of time.
Yeah. But again, often now they're a waste of time because you get this story about how they're just refusing to answer questions. Or again, saying things that are quite clearly blatantly untrue. And the thing is, it just doesn't work for that long. They've lost a load of Labour voters, new Labour voters. They lost a lot of their old Labour voters. They're losing, a lot of the media now. They're being much more critical. Lost a lot of their backbench MPs. I mean, I just can't, at this point, I can't see how this Labour government survives.
Massive majority.
The full 5 years.
Massive majority. Not even a year in.
Right
third
now.
In the polls. Another poll out this morning, more in common poll, third in the polls.
Do you think Nigel Farage is going to be the next Prime Minister?
I wouldn't rule it out. I think it's possible.
Do you think I know it's possible. Do you think he is going to be there?
I think the most likely scenario, because of the way the electoral maths works, is a Liberal Democrat Labour coalition. I don't want that to be the case, but I think it's the most likely thing.
It'll be fascinating. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Thank you very much. Always great to have you in the studio, Peter. Thank you very much. 12:27 is the time. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to get to your calls coming in thick and fast on the grooming gang conversations, the border conversations, you name it. Get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text the word talk as well in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Got some of those messages to read out as well. And don't forget, of course, that calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost one. Standard network rate message. This is Talk.
It won't surprise you to hear that I agree with everything that Nigel Farage said there. And I think for me, the key thing that I want to hear from this government is that they will commit to delivering this inquiry and publishing the report before the next election, so that voters actually have a chance to decide who was to blame and whether they actually want to frankly exercise the only power they have, which is at the ballot box, to punish those people.
Big themes of the issues actually coming up at PMQs at the start. Exchanges. Gavin says, my reaction is they all talk too much. Every single party does nothing but talk. We vote them in. They do the opposite. It doesn't matter what they say anymore. The government has lost the faith and belief of the public. Let's go to Grace, who is in London. Hello, Grace.
Hi.
Hi, what do you want to say?
I think that we probably ought to, people are getting their wires crossed about this, and we maybe need to be clearer that what we are talking about isn't really ethnicity. It is linked to ethnicity in some ways, but it's not really ethnicity. It is culture, and also we need to make clear that human beings are all individuals with their own minds and actions and are not fully beholden to culture. There are things about British culture that I have nothing to do with, although I'm completely boringly British.
Yeah.
So we live in a society, it's referred to sometimes as a Christian country, which was impacted by the teachings of Jesus, who taught that all human beings, even the poor, should be respected.
Yeah. No, we are, our entire culture is, I'm an atheist, we're based on the Judeo-Christian culture, which is very, very different, yeah.
Yeah, and prior to those teachings becoming part of our culture, there were, you know, the ancient Romans were completely white, but they thought it was okay to abuse people. Yeah. So if we have people coming in from other cultures, the issue isn't their DNA or the colour of their skin.
Exactly.
And I think if we made that clearer, we might have a little bit less kind of left-right disagreement.
Oh, completely. I couldn't agree with you more. I've been making that point for years and years and years. There's nothing about the pigmentation in your skin or where you were born that means that you're more likely to abuse a child or rape a woman. It's absurd. As you say, it's culture. But it is also, I mean, it is also, you know, basic understandings of right or wrong. Any, you know, I don't care what the teachings have been. Once you're in this country, you must see, you know, you're part of this culture here, even if it's not one you accept, you must know that whether it's right or wrong to ply a 11-year-old or 12-year-old with drinking drugs and then gang rape her. I'm going to guess you're going to know that.
Yeah, but many people do, because again, we're all individuals. We're not all just beholden to our culture.
Yeah.
And so there are plenty of people who have come from certain parts of the world who are fantastic citizens.
Of course.
You know, I mean, I know quite a few Iranian people at my church, and they obviously completely disagree with the leadership of Iran.
As do a lot of people in Iran. But also, by the way, we've had massive, you know, grooming scandals and child abuse scandals in the Christian, you know, CFE Church and in the Catholic Church. And by God, it's very clear in the teachings of that culture that you're not supposed to do that, and they did it anyway.
Yeah, well, I'd argue that those people got into those places so that they could be in positions of power of potential victims, rather than ever having any inclination of actually following the teaching.
Very good point. Grace, such a good call. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Tarquin is on the line in London. Tarquin, you want to talk about our conversation. This often happens. People want to talk about conversations with James Matthewson. He's a former, not current, very much a former Labour Party spokesman. What do you want to say?
Julia, I think you did an excellent surgical strike on that buffoon of a man. I mean, you completely skewered him, and yet he was obviously giving these marching orders. No matter what Julia Hartley-Brewer says, disagree with her. No matter what.
No, that's what he honestly. No, he's an independent thinker. That's what he thinks.
Yeah, but you know, and that doesn't mean anything in this world. He's obviously don't disagree with everything she says, whatever she says, because even when she's right, disagree with her. I couldn't believe a plastic Geordie like that with his stupid fake northern accent.
Oh, come on, no. Come on, okay, I'm going to be. No. I know other people might do it. I don't think we need to be abusive about him to make a point about we thought what he said was wrong.
It made me nauseated as to why everyone detests Labour now, because they're so hypocritical. They can't make it. The cognitive dissonance is off the charts.
That's it. It's doublethink. It's literally doublethink. That's the thing I find terrifying. Yeah. And the refusal to accept basic realities of, that not all cultures are equal.
Even at the expense of 13-year-old little girls being desecrated. It nauseates me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. Thank you very much. Appreciate that call, Tarquin there. 12:34 is time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Dr. Alan Mendoza of the Henry Jackson Society of where we are on the Iran. I don't know why I've got this problem with a mental block. Israel-Iran conflict. Is America going to join with Israel or not? And would that be a good thing if it was happening? This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Lots of focus, obviously, in the last few days on, of course, the grooming scandal. Now focus turning to our borders, but also small matter of, people talking about World War III in the Middle East, of course, with those Israeli strikes now in their sixth day on Iran, and, of course, strikes coming back from Iran on Israel. Now the possibility of Donald Trump bringing the US into the war as well. But would that be a good thing? Would that be a bad thing? And why have we not heard from our British Prime Minister the strong words of support for Israel that we've heard from, say, the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz? Well, let's talk about all this with Dr. Alan Mendoza. He's Executive Director at the Henry Jackson Society and joins us now. A very good morning to you.
Hello, Julia. Hello.
Thank you very much indeed. Look, in terms of where Israel and Iran are right now, we've had, wars of words. We've got the Ayatollah Khamenei talking about, the usual, people will regret this. We've got Donald Trump talking about we know where the Ayatollah is, but we're not going to assassinate him. Well, not yet anyway. Possibility of America getting drawn into the war. Do you think America will get drawn into the war? And would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's the quickest way to end the war is to have the Americans actually be in the war, because the Americans could end it very quickly given the ordnance they could bring to bear. The Americans could destroy the Iranian nuclear program very quickly. They could then, if they wanted to, push on to regime change very quickly. It is really American weaponry that would make the key difference. Now, whether they will or not is another matter. But I think the intelligence estimates that the president will be getting will be telling him the regime is close to cracking.
Yeah.
So, if you can give them a push, you will succeed in doing something that no American president has managed for, 45 years, which is get control over the Iranian agenda.
The difficulty Donald Trump has, of course, is there's a very big difference between sending American jets to protect Israel when the mullahs or Hezbollah, send a load of missiles into Israel and a defensive of an ally. It's very different when it becomes an offensive one. Now, I would certainly argue, and I'm probably sure you would as well, and I think anyone who's paid attention, this was a preemptive defensive strike by Israel, given that Iran has been clearly trying to build a nuclear weapon and has made it very clear they would like to deploy that nuclear weapon to destroy Israel. So, I'm not quite sure why people think that this is an out-of-the-blue attack from Israel. However, Donald Trump was got elected, as indeed every president in America is elected, on this sort of American-first isolationist view. I'm going to get America out of wars, not get us dragged into more wars in the Middle East or get us out of Ukraine, etc., etc. Would this be going against probably an awful lot of what his sort of MAGA constituency want, wouldn't it?
Well, it would go against some of what they want, but I can assure you, Julia, that after 45 years of hostility to America from Iran, that most Americans are very happy to have a situation where Iran finally gets its just desserts. This is a regime, don't forget, that every Friday burns American flags.
Yeah.
It shouts death to Satan. It shouts death to America. This is not a usual situation, really. So from this perspective, I think it is actually going to be a popular move if the Iranians got their just desserts, as you said, for the right reason, which is, of course, on nuclear, front in that way, that they've gone in because they were about to build that nuclear weapon. And that gives the Americans also a right, given part of the international community, to deal with this and to resolve this in a very successful way. So I think for all the opposition that has been felt at various times in the MAGA movement to this, there'll also be people who say, the way to make America great again is easy victories, which this would be, since Israelis have dealt with them already for you, and then you pick up the prize at the end, which is a transformed Middle East. It's the actual antithesis to previous American interventions, which were very costly. This will be very cheap, and it'll be very effective and very quick. So I think actually there'll be people in the MAGA camp who recognise that and come on side.
And I suppose you say a clear aim, because, to a certain extent, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, it was, OK, we're going to, topple, the Taliban in Afghanistan. We're going to topple Saddam Hussein. But then what? And Iran is very different. It's a much, much bigger state. It's a much more developed state. But there is also that opposition, a sort of a less, is not an Islamist extremist opposition. They're the ones who've been in power all the time. There's an opposition kind of in waiting, wanting to take over and could actually keep that country together. That would be the hope. But there's always going to be the concern after what happened in Iraq, what happened in Afghanistan, what happened in Libya and elsewhere after the Arab Spring, that actually be careful what you wish for when a despot of any kind, or these regimes, when they are being deposed, that you may end up with something worse.
All that is true, Julia, and yet this regime is the worst regime you could have in Iran. It already is the most extreme form of Shia religious fundamentalism that you could find. It already supports terrorism around the neighborhood and around the world. It already has been trying to build nuclear weapons. It's kind of difficult to imagine what could possibly be worse than this. In fact, almost all options would be better than this. And this is why it's different to, say, Iraq. It's why it's different to, say, other areas in the Middle East. This is the worst regime. It's already in power. It's already been put into power and into place that way. And the best outcome here would be to remove this regime, because not only would it give Iranians a better future, it would stop any progress towards nuclear weapons there, and it would make the region transformed into a positive place for once.
And in terms of the reactions of other Middle Eastern countries, there's some sort of condemnation, because a lot of leaders go through the motions really to appease the people on their own streets. But will they all be quite secretly going, oh, thank goodness Israel's acted and sorted out Iran?
Yeah, well, I think you saw that with the reaction of Friedrich Merz yesterday, the German Chancellor. He said Israel's done the world a favour. The dirty work, the world's dirty work has been done by Israel here. So, of course, there is a moment which everyone in the region recognises. The Saudis said yesterday, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. If they were to have one, we would have one.
Yeah.
Well, read between the lines. That tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, indeed. And what do you make of the protests here? And we've seen, I mean, again, I think the absurdity of protests, which have gone far from being supporting Palestinian people in Gaza to being effectively pro-Hamas and anti-Israel, let's face it, anti-Semitic on lots of occasions, demonstrations here and in America in particular as well, to some protesters, some campaigners and demonstrators literally flying the flag of Iran and talking about defending Iran and the Iranian regime. Often these people being from the left, supposedly thinking that a regime that, you know, beats and murders young women for not wearing a head covering and the like, and thinking that they in some way are allies, along with, you know, Hamas and their treatment of their civilian population, and particularly of women. Well, what do you make of people, so many people in the West, particularly on the left, being supportive of some of the most heinous regimes with which they have the least in common? What do you make of that?
Well, what it tells you is that those people's priorities are backwards, basically. These aren't the people who are supporting human rights. These aren't the people who are helping free people. They are the oppressors. And what is happening here is an inversion of moral authority. And the people who are marching for Iran, who've been marching, as you say, in support of Hamas, are people who wish us to be destroyed as well in the West. And that's the sad reality. They hate ourselves, therefore they hate those, or they support those who hate us too. And that's becoming clearer and clearer as we see the sort of turning of the clock. And I guarantee you tomorrow, if another evil regime were to take on the West, they would be supporting that regime as well. It's all a continuum.
It's an anti-West, anti-Western values. Now, let's talk about values and culture, because it's something we're talking to you about international affairs right now, but something you and I have discussed on a number of occasions, the work of the Henry Jackson Society tackling extremism, radicalisation in this country. But what do you make of so many people, I mean, on the left in this country? I mean, I would say they were the first ones to politicise the issue of the grooming gangs by basically saying, let's not investigate because the perpetrators appeared to be Pakistani Muslim men, and that will damage community cohesion. There's no doubt at all there has been a far-right bandwagon, but the people speaking out saying we need a national inquiry and people saying this should stop and these people should be prosecuted, absolutely not on a far-right or any other kind of bandwagon, just calling for right justice to be done. But Alan Mendoza, I mean, in terms of those who would argue that this is in some ways somehow a cultural issue, a community cohesion issue, rather than a simple matter of criminality, what do you make of that argument?
Well, I think the evidence that Baroness Casey has already turned up suggests that there is a cultural problem here. There is a social cohesion issue. It's not simply a criminality issue when you have a disproportionate number of a small minority of Pakistani men involved in this crime. So she herself has said, we need to understand this more. We need to understand what the cultural drivers are. The government belatedly has woken up to this as well and said, we too have sort of decided that there might be some mileage in this cultural argument in this debate. And so as a result, what we're seeing is that the cultural sociological points are coming to the fore. They always should have done, since anyone with eyes and a brain could have worked out there was a cultural and social problem here in terms of what was going on. So I think it's great we've got the evidence, as it were, to support these contentions now as well.
Wait a second, but we had the evidence already. It's just now Baroness Casey, a Labour peer, has said it. Now it's OK for everyone to say it. But before that, you were a bigot for saying it.
Oh, totally. And that was a far-right bandwagon nonsense argument. The argument was here that, of course, she's saying it now, therefore it's OK. But the reality is, you codify this, and you do. I think we did learn some things from the audit, apart from the horror of the crimes. I think we learned that there was insufficient data collected, that police forces actually did not record the ethnicity and religion on purpose. Yeah. So I think we did learn something from that audit, which we suspected beforehand, but now we could actually point was true. And I think that's part of the joy of having audits like this, is that you actually discover more of the truth. And when we do the national inquiry, we'll discover even more of the truth because of it. Yeah. And that's why it's so important to have one.
Indeed. Dr. Alan Mendoza, always good to talk to you, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. Thank you very much for that. Claire Pissell, it is fascinating how much international politics and national politics are colliding at the moment in terms of these sort of cultural discussions, these values discussions, these whose side are you on discussions.
And it's not a difficult place to be. You should know who you believe, who you trust, who you want to put your allyship with. And I can't understand why some people find this so fundamentally difficult.
Yeah, I think that I'm on the side of the girls who've been raped. I don't care who raped them. I want whoever they are to be prosecuted. I wouldn't go after them because they're Pakistani or Muslim.
No,
I go after them because they
irrelevant.
raped a girl in the same way I would go after a white man who was an atheist. I think it's very strange. In the same way, when you look at international affairs, whether it's been Hamas and Israel or Iran and Israel, I'm on the side of the democracy. I stand with Israel. I mean, for which I've had at least 5,000 messages telling me I'm a baby killer in the last weekend. But I mean, that's just par for the course now.
That's just Tuesday.
That's just Tuesday. But you know, I mean, I'm not carrying in a bomb shelter, but nevertheless, I still think it's important for people to say it out loud.
It is, and when you start to see people on the streets of the United Kingdom supporting a terrorist organisation
and a theocratic, horrible government.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the Ayatollah and his regime, you sort of think, who are you and what are you doing?
I think, my thing is, I think they are properly stupid and properly mad. And I think stupidity and madness are really bad combinations.
Yeah, please don't have children. Please don't have
Please
children.
do not contribute to the gene pool and lower our average IQ. And I don't think that people have different opinions from me on lots of other things, but on certain key issues, I genuinely find also they know no facts. As a general rule, try not to form an opinion on something if you don't know any facts.
And when you point that out to them and say, why don't you go and read a little bit about it, they accuse you of being biased.
Yeah.
And you think, well, no, I'm telling you to go.
Again, I have no unconscious bias. My biases are all very conscious because I have a bias and an opinion on things once I know enough about them.
Precisely.
It's old-fashioned.
That's how we do it.
It may catch on. Universities should try it sometime. 12:49 is the time. Up next, we're going to talk about... This is going to blow your mind, everyone. The opening of HS2. I know, I didn't think it was still a thing, but apparently we are still spending our taxpayers' money. It's going to be delayed by 2 years more. I'm going to tell you right now that's a lie. It's going to be delayed by longer than that, but we're going to talk to travel correspondent Simon Calder about that up next. This is Talk.
Nobody helped, and every professional tried to cover it up. And I know there's some survivors in Oldham who got complete anonymity, and their abuse took place in Westminster.
Yeah.
And
So
this national inquiry needs to go and cover that.
I mean, it's got to cover all of it, hasn't it? I mean, there can't be a single stone unturned. Every single, from senior councillors to humble pen pushers.
Instead of young girls getting raped or young men from God knows where turning up on our shores and being given, free homes and hotel rooms and TV licenses, we're going to talk about our money being wasted somewhere else, and that is on HS2. It was a brilliant idea, wasn't it? High-speed railway, 21st century, was thought to like. Well, yeah, apart from when it trebled in cost and, just never really started actually happening. But HS2, we found out today, is set to be delayed by yet another 2 years. As a damning new report, there's never been a non-damning forthcoming report on HS2 reveals that costs for the project have increased by another £37 billion. Apparently, the last time they said it was going to be completed, the target was 2033. Now, the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, she's going to formally announce today that the remaining section of the high-speed railway line between London and Birmingham will no longer be completed then. It will be at least 2 years later. Who are we kidding? And the cost of the project has shot up even more. I mean, goodness me, I can't go into this copy yet to find the actual point where it actually tells us exactly how much it's all going to cost, but it's well over 100 billion now. Simon Calder is travel correspondent at The Independent and joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Simon.
Yes, good afternoon, Julia. Just been listening, actually, to Heidi Alexander in the House of Commons.
I'm sorry about that, but someone has to do it. That's your job. What is the actual total cost of HS2 so far, given that they've reined it in an awful lot?
OK, well, this is a project that was begun in 2009. It's now 16 years on from now, and we have spent £40 billion creating absolutely nothing that can be used at the moment.
Brilliant. Can we just stop and have a little round of applause? Well done, Britain. Well done. We are absolutely useless at everything.
Well, yes, I think in this particular case we most definitely are. You and I have been talking about this for some time. Due to open between London and Birmingham next year, it won't be for another decade because it's been delayed again. And actually, what Heidi Alexander was doing in the House just now was basically doing everything she could to pin the blame on the last lot. Yes. And to be fair, there's a huge amount of blame that needs to be apportioned. The series of secretaries of state who've kept changing their minds. Yeah. I mean, just designing a station at Euston and then having another go at designing it. So not actually building anything, just, paper and computers. That cost us £250 million. Yeah. And guess what? The government changed their minds again.
Yeah. And it's it's one of the issues whenever governments do anything with a nation, it's not their money, it's our money, they've got unlimited resources, and basically they all come in, they change their minds, even the secretaries of state, each one change their minds, and each time they do that, the contractors get to go, oh, goody, 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 rub their hands in glee, and we've spent billions and billions just on paperwork, without even a single spade going into the ground, and we've rolled it back massively to the one bit of railway we don't actually need. My husband used to do a load of work in Birmingham, and he said, oh, if they build HS2, I'll be using that. And he goes, what I'll do is I'll lose 20 minutes on my journey time, so I'll get up 20 minutes later. That was literally this, it wasn't going to achieve anything more than that.
Oh no, and look again. Loads of politicians need to be pilloried for this. The most
they should be in prison for this.
Well, Heidi Alexander mentioned the fact that there's quite a lot of fraud being going on, she believes, and she said that people will pay the price for that. But the politicians, I mean, I think in a very crowded field, Rishi Sunak was the one who absolutely did the worst damage, because actually, if you built the second part of HS2, the one going from Birmingham to Crewe and to Manchester, that is where you are going to get the best return. And in an attempt to win over the motorists and everybody else, he just said, I'm scrapping this. And then he pretended that they would be spending £30 billion plus on something called Network North, which surprisingly to you and me included projects in Devon and Kent. So it's just absolutely
my geography's not great, but even I know that doesn't work. But this is the thing. It is the north of this country, it's the Midlands, it's the southwest, but particularly the North Midlands have been crying out for cross-country, almost like east-west routes. That far greater priority at far lower cost than this route, which I don't know anyone at either end who wants it to happen. And again, it's our abject inability to build anything on time and to cost.
And I think possibly the £100 million bat tunnel sums it up. This was a bit of tunnelling done to protect bats. Just think, in Britain at the moment, what you could do to benefit people with £100 million.
Yeah, but would it help the bats, Simon? That's the concern we've all got. Simon, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Simon Calder, travel correspondent at The Independent. Claire Pearsall, I mean, again, this is another plague on all your houses story. Everyone in government and everyone involved in this, they're all useless and incompetent, and some are fraudulent.
It's amazing, isn't it? They can't decide on a station design when actually you just need to get spades in the ground, start digging, work out the details of a station layout.
No,
later.
I think you should know the design, but agree a design and stick to it, and that's the budget. End of. I mean, I would never want to be involved. If someone doing a kitchen, a new kitchen or a conservatory, these people, I would not let them do anything. They literally end up spending 60 million quid on that.
Could you imagine?
Useless. It just blows my mind, and it's our money. Kev, so thank you so much for that. Ian Collins is here. I mean, you and I have been yapping on about HS2 since the beginning of time.
Love HS2.
And the amount of money, yeah, you do. I'm sure you do.
It's my favourite too.
The amount of money that's gone on this is
it's
mind-blowing.
Crazy. So, by the way, Simon, do you know I once bumped into Simon Corder on 3 different days in 3 different places: Birmingham, Manchester, and Gatwick Airport.
Okay, well here's another random thing. His mother-in-law knows my mum. I know,
what
it's
about
a
that?
really small world.
Yeah, but what I didn't realise is it was a stalking case, and we went to the magistrate's court. He got a 50 quid fine. Never saw him again. But
you did have a go at me for stalking you as well.
There was that. Do you remember that? Yeah, they were the years.
What are you talking about today?
We are, of course,
no stories around.
nothing. No potential World War